Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Steven Zuber.
I'm Jay Sticky.
And welcome to the Mind Killer. I'm Wes Venza.
I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
And I'm David. The rationalist brain on politics.
Yeah.
We are doing a crosscast today.
Mind, brain, Bayesian.
The Bayesian killers. Conspiracy.
And together we are.
Yes.
Mumble, mumble.
And I'll form the head. So,
Did his own left leg.
We actually do have 5 people, and we could totally make a giant robot.
hell yeah. Well, making
Or
the giant
like a
robot would take a while. We
Super
couldn't do it while
Sentai
we're recording.
team,
Yes.
at least.
So anyways, yes, we are doing a cross-pollination podcast thingy. That's not a term.
It's close enough. I was going to say if we hit 10,000
Cross-pollination.
patrons, then we'll do a robot. But that joke is past.
Don't ever promise that. Because we actually have to make a robot.
I want to make a
If
robot.
we hit that level, I'm prepared to make a robot.
Okay.
Not a good robot. I don't know anything about robots, but I'll make something that looks like a robot.
Cool.
All right.
I'm you know what? I'm willing to go with that.
Great.
If we get 10,000 patrons in the next 10 years.
Deal.
All right.
I know how to make a robot that is a Roomba for tabletop. And, one that does a silly dance.
Great. We're halfway there.
We need
Various
one-
the little car things.
We need,
Like,
one,
I've done some very basic robotics.
we need one large enough to fit at least one of us.
So for like the 4 listeners we have who listen to the Mind Killer but not the Bayesian Conspiracy, they're always like this.
Well, yeah.
It's just tangents from start to finish.
We don't have a good script or a strict leadership.
But we usually get to what we were trying to talk about.
So today we're talking about 2 less wrong posts. First one is priming and contamination.
Yes. Okay. I guess, yeah. Wes and David are the hosts of the other podcast, which we're talk about politics. I wanted to mention that real quick.
Oh yeah, yes.
News of the day kind of thing.
Did I get to the point too fast now?
You
All right.
did. How dare you?
Little thought then.
Getting too good at the segues.
This is why you need a good outline.
No, outlines are for nerds.
Yeah, we just wing it and forget stuff like cool people.
Yeah. Like we haven't mentioned our merch, it turns out, for quite a while. Because
That's true.
Oh yeah, David didn't know. That's all right.
Yeah,
We
guys, they have merch.
Face wearing our dope ass shirt, and it looks great.
Hell
I'm in
yeah.
fact wearing this shirt.
You can get the Bayesian Conspiracy logo on anything.
Yes. Well, not anything. Apparently you cannot get it on mouse pads.
Which is silly.
Weird. Yeah.
Hmm.
You'd think. It's a high
That
selling
said,
item.
I think I give anyone who wants it permission to just download the JPEG and put it on their own Make Your Mousepad website. Go nuts. Just don't sell it. If you sell it, I want a nickel.
Well, we want at least 15%.
That works.
Okay.
I went with a nickel because that's what J. Jonah Jameson wanted every time someone said Spider-Man.
Oh, was that from one of the movies?
It was in the first one with Tobey Maguire.
Cool.
Well, there goes my bootleg mousepad business.
You can still do it. Cut us in. I guess it's not really bootleg if you're cutting us in.
Well, yeah, but then the FBI will get after you because they have nothing better to do with their time, right? That's what you guys
Exactly.
They went after somebody for selling fake sports merch, which is actually a fun idea for a market, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking like used celebrity clothing would be another like whole thing.
Oh,
They
yeah.
sell used women's underwear in vending machines in parts of Japan,
Mhm.
and I mean
They
you could
sure
just
do.
buy underwear, funk them up a bit, and sell them over in Ziploc bags over the mail, and make $50 a month, or how much people are willing to buy.
I mean, I could wear the underwear. No one has no one has. I'm not a good, cute Japanese girl.
No, they could tell.
Could they? Yeah, maybe.
Only you.
No,
Okay.
it doesn't smell like a cute Japanese girl. Jesus.
It smells like a big
Brodsky
American.
again.
Sorry,
To the
can we
throat
talk
of
about
Mexican.
literally anything else?
All right, now that we're primed on underwear sales,
Yes.
let's talk
I felt
about.
like contamination was maybe a better segue there. But
Damn it, you're right. Now that we've contaminated the conversation with used underwear sales. So this post is fun for a couple of reasons. One,
What is the name of this post?
priming and contamination.
Thank you.
As I said a few minutes ago,
I know, but that was so long ago we probably forgot.
our astute listeners will have remembered. Anyway, this was on the I forget when this came out, 2007,
Seven.
8. Yeah. So like the state of the research at the time was, and this, I mean, I was taught this in all the way through college, that, if you suggest people, whether it's like spin the wheel, and it's fixed to land on like somewhere in the teens or somewhere in the 60s, then ask them to guess the number of countries in Africa that are part of the United Nations. Their number will correlate with the number that landed on the wheel. Or
be a higher or lower number.
yeah. if you ask them their
Not bad.
zip code and then ask them how many practicing physicians there are in California, those numbers will correlate. Whereas if you ask them in the other order, they don't. I was told all this shit for ages.
I think this is true. You're bringing up the replication crisis, right? I think
Yeah.
that had more to do with,
That's more like anchoring.
well, it was also priming, but that was specifically in like social sciences.
Why are we bringing up the replication crisis for people who have not read this post yet?
Because as the title suggests, it's about priming.
Okay.
Yeah.
And priming?
Priming is the idea that if I were to like say, hey, I'm going to go to that place where I need to go deposit a check. By the way, when I say bank, what does that mean to you? You'd be like, oh, the money thing, not the edge of a river, right?
Okay.
Whereas if I had said, I'm going to go chase beavers by your house because you sent me a picture of a beaver over the weekend, and then asked you what bank meant, you'd be like, oh, that's the edge of the water, the body of water.
Yeah.
Now, that's obviously like not, if it was just me and you, it's not a reliable sample size, but the idea was that this was a big enough effect to where you could get people to connect ideas to other ideas by giving them one idea first.
Yeah. And like the whole bank thing is kind of just obvious because, yeah, you're going to be thinking about the context of what you guys are talking about. But this extended to the fact that some studies said that like if you prime people with ideas of oldness, they will start walking slower afterwards.
Right.
Which, I mean, at the time I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Our brains are weird. And then the replication crisis happened, which for people who've listening a while would already know is the fact that a lot of social science studies before about 2014 or so, people just didn't bother to replicate them. And once they started trying to replicate them, they failed to replicate. And
And in the meantime, they'd been like writing books about them.
Yeah, about what this means for humans.
Yeah, including them in, I don't know, discussions where they might be relevant. Yeah.
But like the fact that
less wrong sequences, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that I have so many examples of priming just from what I remember from 10 years ago suggests to me that they didn't necessarily replicate the exact thing with bank or something, but they did enough similar things across, I'm assuming, decades and different. In fact, another fun thing about this post is that it's cited heavily. So like this wasn't just one person misreading one person's paper or even trusting too much in one person's paper.
Right.
This was like the established consensus for some
Years.
decades. Yeah.
There was even those things where if you put a cold cup in someone's hand, they're going to act more cold to you. And if you put a warm cup, they'll act warmer to you. And I think my favorite thing that's come out of the replication crisis is one of the best ways to predict if something is going to replicate or not without actually doing the replication is asking a random person on the street, does this sound like crazy bullshit? Not using those exact words, but for things that mostly sound like crazy bullshit, they don't replicate.
Or even
things
just
where people are like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Those often will.
even just ask yourself, does this trick my bullshit-o-meter?
Yeah.
Now that said, like it's possible to be surprised by results,
Yes.
right? If you had asked me 2 years ago, hey, if there's a flu-like plague going around in 2020, do you think vitamin D will have a surprising effect on the impact that it has on a body? I'd be like, no, fuck you, you snake oil salesman. And then lo and behold, it appears to, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing about this too is like I think it's worth keeping in mind that like I don't blame Eliezer for getting this wrong because it was the established state of science and his goal wasn't to like become an expert.
Yeah, it wasn't
in-
his research.
Right.
Like, he's citing other research that seemed to have been peer reviewed and
Yeah. And I think that, even if you're trying to be as right as possible, like it is still a reliable heuristic to say, let's trust the expert consensus.
Right.
And like, I'm doing that with the vitamin D thing. I didn't review anything personally, and I'm not equipped to. It would take me a long time to get good enough. And how am I going, even if I were to review some of the studies that were done, how do I know that they weren't fraudulent? Am I going to conduct my own before I believe anything? Fuck that. Who has the time?
I think we've been talking a lot because we're in the same room and we can see each other. Wes, David, did you guys have things to jump in on add here?
Nah.
So the vitamin D thing is pretty hotly contested.
yeah.
Somebody's offering like a $100,000 bet that vitamin D cures COVID, and Scott Alexander is definitely on the other side. He said, and he was offering to take that bet with slightly lower terms. 100K was a bit too rich for him, but
Cures COVID isn't the claim I heard. I heard that it impacted the severity of the case.
yeah, there's a lot of evidence that it people who have bad cases of COVID are vitamin D deficient.
Right.
There's not a lot of evidence that it's that deficiency that's causing the severity, but it does kind of hint at that. And they haven't really had time to run really good studies on what the causal mechanism is.
Yeah.
Wait,
and
didn't they run a study that where like 100% of the people that they gave vitamin D had no to mild cases?
I don't remember.
I distinctly remember Zvi Moskowitz blog post that said either this is a real effect, it's fraud, or it's incredibly good luck, and no one has luck that incredible. Or I guess incredibly bad luck if it's really is a false positive.
yeah, or just a bad study.
But then the takeaway to take from this post is that we should wait for that to replicate once or twice. But of course, like the other thing with this particular example is that a bottle of 300 vitamin D pills is $8.
Yeah, and it's not going to hurt you.
Right. I was already taking it every day for the last few years anyway. And so when I heard this was, sometime over the summer maybe?
Yeah, probably like 6 months ago.
I bought $80 worth of vitamin D pills and gave them to everybody in my family. And I said, take these, please.
I gave them out as stocking stuffers for Christmas.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, if they were, maybe it was over Christmas. Whatever it was sometime, the whole year blended together. But, if vitamin D pills cost $1 each, I would have been more inclined to do more homework or, at least wait for better data or something. But given how cheap it was, this didn't strike me as like a, if I was being huckstered by snake oil, well, there's probably some marginal benefit to taking vitamin D anyway, and it didn't cost me that much money. So,
well, so talking about the replication crisis, I get really mad that that's what people call it, because it's I call it the bullshit crisis because it is the thing we're referencing is we've discovered that a lot of the entire the psychology community and psychological studies are bullshit. They did them badly with bad information hygiene, poorly designed studies, and didn't use methods that we've known for decades are what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And so I feel like
a couple of episodes you talked about the post where where it's basically just Eliezer bitching about how rationalization is a really bad term because rationalization is the opposite of rational.
Yeah.
And I feel kind of the same way about the replication crisis. The replications aren't the problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's not that the failure to replicate isn't the problem. The problem is the study was bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's much harder to cite the bullshit crisis in a serious scientific article.
I suppose so.
And I think most people who are talking about it know what it means. I don't think anybody thinks that replication is the problem.
Yeah. I mean,
that's also true of rationalization, though.
Yeah.
But it's
I love the fact that he said it's like calling lying truthalization.
Right.
Truthalization.
Well, they did call it truthiness.
Yes. Stephen Colbert specifically.
He saved the elephant population.
Yeah.
All right. So I don't have much else to offer on this one, other than I think that it's a valuable, like the history. I like the fact that it's left up. Maybe if I haven't read it in the Rationality AI to Zombies, maybe there's a disclaimer at the top or bottom that says, by the way, this didn't replicate. If there's not, I would support that. But I do like the idea of leaving it in, because it's like, hey, look, you can be well informed and wrong, and that's a perfectly legit place to be. So
yeah. Likewise, I appreciate people putting their confidence intervals at the top of essays, and the thing Scott Alexander does where he has posted his retractions just on, I think he still has that on the news site, I don't know, but there was just a menu link that was a list of all the things I fucked up on.
It would be nice if these posts had a header or something that said, by the way, this failed to replicate.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Brian Dunning of Skeptoid does that every several months, corrections or errors or whatever it was.
Well, especially because, entry into the rationalist community, people are all like, go read the sequences. So this is a 2007 article, but people are definitely still reading it.
I think Eliezer himself is busy doing Miri stuff, but he could probably delegate somebody to do that. Maybe we should email him.
We can email the folks we talked to who run less wrong. And ask them.
Email Rob Bensinger. Didn't he have a big role in doing the AI to Zombies?
Yes, but AI to Zombies, I don't know. I haven't read AI to Zombies. I assume it's fixed or noted at least in AI to Zombies.
Maybe.
I have it. I don't remember it.
Okay.
I listened to the audiobook version of AI to Zombies, and they didn't say anything about, by the way. There was no disclaimer in the audio version anyway.
Did they?
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
Did they include this post?
Yeah.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Okay, then. Yeah. Maybe we should reach out.
I don't remember that, and I'm pretty sure I would have if they'd included it. So, yeah, they probably didn't.
Yeah, I listened to it this morning.
Although, per what Jace just said he likes, I'd say like 70% confidence on that.
Okay. I do want to at least mention that there's still a note of good in here, in useful information, I guess, in here, in that our brains do run in networks, and activating one concept will at least somewhat tangentially activate concepts that are strongly linked to that one, which is, as pointed out in a Scott Alexander on politics recently, a common thing used in politics where you just associate bad things with the other side and good things with your side. And even if they don't have anything to do with each other, eventually in the listeners, an association starts to form between good on our side and bad on their side. And I think that's most of what you see on Twitter nowadays.
I think that, I mean, a lot of these, this is the sort of thing that, you know, I couldn't cite a well done peer reviewed study on this, but it sounds like that makes perfect sense to me, and I'm prepared to endorse that.
Well, I mean, it happened just in the recent Scott Alexander article where he's like, Scott Alexander said a good thing about something Charles Murray said, and Charles Murray wrote the bell curve, and the bell curve can be interpreted to be racist. Therefore, Scott Alexander is racist. And they didn't say that last line because that would be a lie. But, you know, they let all those associations just go together there in people's heads.
Sure. Yeah, and they knew it.
narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know that nobody who is evil ever says anything right or good.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I mean, and maybe just in the effect of reading that sentence about Scott Alexander, they believe it just in the process of understanding the sentence.
Are you trying to segue?
I mean, that does tie us into, do we believe everything we're told? But I don't know if I'm jumping the gun.
yeah, well, I just I'm trying to find out whether priming as a concept was replication crisis, and I think it is just social priming.
Yeah.
Or behavioral priming.
Yeah.
Having a hard time just finding a clear answer on Google, though.
I know that the behavioral priming definitely failed to replicate. That was the one where like putting hot things in people's hands or making them think about old people and they walk slower. Those ended up being just complete crap.
That doesn't surprise me. You know, like it's, I mean, if you can make people happier just by giving them hand warmers, I mean, you know,
I might be happier if I'm cold and someone gives me a hand warmer.
Sure.
That's because I'm not cold anymore.
Right.
I think that one was not replication crisis. The link between temperature and I don't know, what is it, revealed mood or whether you perceive someone as behaving warm or cold towards you.
I think that's broader than just like, are you holding a warm or cold beverage?
I'd have
like,
to
like if I'm freezing, I'm probably annoyed at everything.
I'd have to look into it again, but I actually have remember the wearable that you wanted to get, the Ember. Did you end up getting one of those?
I did not.
Oh, well, I have one. I like it.
I know. I tried it
What is it?
back
It's,
when we could see
yeah.
people.
Back when, other humans existed.
I think you let me try it at Solstice.
Yeah, I let a lot of people try it at Solstice. I probably should be getting some kickback from them for how much I've been marketing the thing. But,
No, I don't know. It convinced me not to get it.
Anyway, what is it?
it's a wristwatch-looking device that you wear on the inside of your wrist, and you can make it warm or
Oh,
cold.
I remember
which
that. Yeah.
does at least change your own internal perception of how warm or cold you are.
Okay.
For some people, apparently, it didn't work for Wes. And they cite some of the other studies about, what do they call it? Thermal wellness.
Thermal wellness.
Like the one about like the beverages. And they claim that this device could have that same result, which I don't know. Even just saying it out loud just now, I'm like kind of, but I would want to go look that up to see.
So you put it on other people's wrists, and then you control how hot or cold it is, depending on how we want them to feel about other people they're interacting with.
Yeah. I have a very strong prior against anything that is adjective wellness.
Yeah.
Like that's just that just sounds like whoever wrote it or did it or whatever is just trying to soak a bunch of Karens.
Well, that was the wording of the company that sells the Ember. It's like
Oh,
they're
I'm
not-
sure.
they were citing studies that used like real words.
Yeah,
But
temperature wellness to me means that like if my body is at rough homeostasis with like the environment, then I'm probably in a better mood than if if I'm sweltering or if I'm shivering, right?
Yeah.
well, the funny thing is, this was invented by students at, forget if it was MIT or whatever, but there were these students that were working in a really cold lab,
Hmm.
and started trying to figure out something that they could wear to keep themselves warmer. And they came up with the idea of the product there but they all liked this thing. So it was like, I like the idea of like the people who, made this product and are selling this product also use it themselves and are getting value out of it. Generally a good sign.
Yeah.
That's what they say about power bands and shit too, though. Those people wear their $60 power bands.
Yeah.
But-
But it's a placebo band.
Yeah.
So they're purchasing a placebo effect, which isn't, it's just kind of real.
As long as you're selling a placebo effect, I'm fine with it. If you're selling it to say this will do all this magic to you, then I get annoyed. What's funny about like the solution about I'm cold at work, like I don't know what the temperature control is like there. Maybe it had to be cold.
I think
But their
that
solution was like build a $300 watch, not buy a 25-cent hand warmer at Walmart,
I
which is what I do.
think they
And
were moving around a lot, and there was something where they couldn't have electricity.
these hand warmers
Or,
last
I don't
7-8
know.
hours. You put them in your pocket,
Oh yeah, those
Yeah.
things are great.
and they're cheap.
Have you seen the ones with
Fingerless a lot.
I use fingerless gloves a lot because I don't know, my extremities tend to get cold and I need my fingers for like typing or other things. But like you covers almost all of your hand and it just helps
Yeah.
so much.
I used to have these fingerless gloves that like had
And
the top
reusable.
part of the glove that you could sort of button to the back of it and then flip it forward so it would have the finger parts if you wanted them. Then I lost one of them, and I haven't been able to find one that I like as much since.
We are getting way off track.
Yeah.
It's all super relevant now.
I tried to shove us into the next post, but you guys were like, hold up.
Also, I just want to say, if the hand warmers last for 7 or 8 hours and cost 50 cents and the watch costs 300, then getting the watch will you will get ahead eventually. After, let's see, 300 divided by 0.25 times 7, 8,400 hours. So about 30 years of continuous use.
I plan on being immortal, so
And that's assuming a 7-day work week.
That's 3 years of continuous use. Because 80,000 hours is 40 years.
And that's assuming they need them every day, not just during
Oh,
winter.
yeah, you're right.
I actually really like it for falling asleep.
Yeah, I'm sure. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's perks. I'm just if your solution was I'm cold at work, I've already got a solution for you, and it's super cheap and it's available at your local Walmart.
Alrighty. I don't know if I should believe you, Stephen. Do I believe everything we're told?
Apparently, this one didn't replicate, but this is the kind of thing that I noticed this in my head.
Oh, really?
I don't know if that's because I have heard of this sort of thing before. I don't remember if I learned about it in philosophy class or from Les Wrong, but I knew Spinoza was associated with the idea that in order to comprehend a proposition, it basically means that you that you intuitively believe it for the time that it takes you to comprehend what it's saying, and only after the fact do you challenge it
Right.
and consider it. But maybe it's because I'm also a really gullible person because deception doesn't come isn't something that I don't know. I'm less.
We're a high trust community.
I guess, which but to the point where sometimes I feel stupid about it, but I think I'm getting better at it.
It correlates to the high openness trait.
Oh, really? Because I also find myself being like ridiculously trusting and gullible to the point that people make fun of me for it often.
I did make fun of you the first time I came over your house, and you were just like, "Oh, hey, you want to just borrow my car?" And I was like, "We have literally met for the first time. I could just drive away with it."
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't.
So the core of this is this following sentence. One might naturally think that on being told a proposition, we would first comprehend what the proposition meant, then consider the proposition, and finally accept or reject it. This obvious seeming method. God damn it!
This
Even
obvious,
you've infected.
You okay, Inyash?
No.
this obvious seeming model of cognition or cognitive process flow dates back to Descartes, but Descartes' rival Spinoza disagreed. Spinoza suggested that we first passively accept a proposition in the course of comprehending it, and only afterwards actively disbelieve propositions which are rejected by consideration. I wonder if this is one of those things where some percentage of people don't have the ability to visualize objects.
Yeah.
Because this is how my brain works. I've done enough meditation to where when I want to, I can notice my thoughts occurring,
Okay.
and I can read something, and then like I believe it for the time it takes me to read it.
Okay.
And I mean, I remember I was listening. It was I forget. This was 10 years ago. Like it was Penn Jillette or something on a podcast. Oh no, it was Richard. I don't know. Somebody was talking about Richard Dawkins because Richard Dawkins was born in Kenya.
Oh.
And I think it might have been Penn Jillette joked, yeah, he was born at the same hospital as Barack Obama. And it took me seconds after that to realize that was a joke.
Okay.
Because I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I'd already had in my head somewhere that Barack Obama was born in Kenya because how everything was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember I was like, oh, that's a fun tidbit. I'm like, hold up a minute. But that took me 5-10 seconds to have that flag fly up. So that's one example that's 10 years old, but I feel like this just happened earlier this week, and I was trying to think of an example, and that's the person that came to me.
I feel like I don't have that internal experience. Maybe I just...
Yeah, I feel like I don't have that internal experience too.
The post cites like some experiment that maybe confirms this, but I also looked for replication on this one online and found that a replication effort actually found the opposite effect. So at the very least, I would say this is highly contested.
Yeah. Or, yeah, like Steven said, maybe it's just people's brains are different, so some people do this and some don't.
Maybe it depends on what sample you got of people you got in your study. Yeah.
I mean, it's still pointing at something potentially interesting, but I don't think we can actually, do anything with it in its current state.
It might also just be a habit that I've ingrained, when if you're reading stuff and you're trying to be a good... a good still manner or whatever. You're like, all right, I'm going to give this person the benefit of the doubt while I'm reading it. I'm going to try and make this the best case possible. And maybe that's what belief feels like in my brain, is like trying to make this true. But I don't think that's true for. I mean, I don't feel that when I'm reading the instructions on a recipe or something, right? And like if it's clear that they meant to say 8 teaspoons rather than 8 cups of salt, right? Like I should notice the difference.
I think I message this experience things as neutral. Like sometimes I'll read something and be like, yeah, it seems plausible, but like if somebody were to say, do you definitely believe this is true? I could be like, what I end up saying is, well, I read it in this one book and it was by an author who generally does good at reviewing articles, adding citations, checking their work. So maybe 75%. But that's how I sort of, or I can read something and be like, it seems like bullshit. But then it sort of goes the other way too, where it's something like 75% bullshit because this is this is Deepak Chopra or something.
So I'm curious, have you guys ever played Two Truths and a Lie?
Yes.
Nope.
When you play that game, do you start from the assumption that things are true and then try to pick out the ones that are wrong? Or do you start from the assumption that they're wrong and try to confirm them?
Wait,
because I definitely come from a standpoint of I start out thinking everything's bullshit, and then I try to figure out which ones are the most plausible.
Huh.
For those unfamiliar with this is, I think, often used as an office icebreaker game where, hey, meet the new team. Tell people, stand up, say your name, and tell people 3 things about yourself, 2 of which are true, 1 of which is not.
Okay.
And then people will guess which one isn't true.
The more fun versions of drinking
all
game.
true, and then try and spot the false.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
It's quite good for first dates, by the way.
Cool. Life hack.
If you like your first dates like you like meeting your office coworkers. Anyway.
So basically this is another one of those, this seems to fail to replicate, so there's not much to really address in the article.
I want to point out that Gilbert Taffaroti and Malone's paper was entitled, "You Can't Not Believe Everything You Read."
Okay. It's a good name.
Which also, as the title of the paper, which you are reading, is also funny.
Yeah. The post does end with, this suggests that we should be more careful when we expose ourselves to unreliable information, especially when we're doing something else at the time, because part of the experiment was distracting people while they were told false things. I get this. I just wanted to talk about this really briefly, because this seems to be a thing that comes up a lot, that the more you're exposed to something, the more you become willing to accept it. And this just seems to happen in the real world. even when we're not talking about this, you automatically believe things when you're initially told them. Even if you disbelieve things at first, it seems like the more something's repeated to you, the more you believe it, which is why things like the QAnon conspiracy can ensnare people, right?
Right.
I do think that, there's definitely a tendency for, I think is that confirmation bias?
Availability
or
heuristic is another good example. Like when
social proof or something?
Yeah, I mean, that's associated with a bunch of other heuristics and biases, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and here's an adjacent example. Like when you look at or Jace too, you might actually know if you're looking at the moon rise and it looks really big on the horizon.
Yeah.
Do you know why that is?
Yeah, because it's close to other things that you can use for comparison.
I don't.
Oh, okay. So
I read it at one point and I forgot.
Well, so I think Enosh is right. But the commonly accepted wisdom is that it's like a magnification from the atmosphere, from hitting more atmosphere.
Oh, I
And-
think
I've
there's
heard
enough
that.
atmosphere to make a difference.
Well, and as it turns out, that's just not the case. But
Okay.
but people, this was like a thing that I remember learning about like 10 years ago, and I learned about the magnification thing 5 years before that, and 10 years later, or 5 years later, they're saying, yeah, we correct people's belief on this, and yet in the act of informing them about like, hey, here's this thing, and here's like the way that it's not true, here's the actual fact. If you ask people, sometimes they'll just remember like the thing that you told them first after the fact, even though it wasn't true.
Yeah.
And so like that might just be an availability thing, an attention thing, or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of other explanations, like authority. Man,
I've heard you can test the moon thing. Just put your thumb out
Exactly.
and see how much of it covers, and no matter where in the sky it is, it'll always cover the same amount.
And I'll be honest, when I first did that,
Oh, that sounds
to
creepy.
test
I wanna
it,
try
it blew my fucking mind.
Oh, really?
Because it looks huge when
It
it's
does.
first coming up over the horizon.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, it's about the size of my thumbnail. And then you give it a few hours, you're like, no way.
No fucking way.
Yeah.
We're in a simulation.
We're empiricists. That's the other virtue here. Anyway, yeah, so you linked to a thing that found the opposite effect of people who believed things like in the act of comprehending them. Can you summarize that link?
Oh, basically just that it found the exact opposite of what was linked in this post, that people tended to be more like the Descartes, at least the people in their sample tended to be much more like the Descartes sample thinking than the Spinoza thinking. Yeah, that's why I said, it's certainly not something that seems to have been confirmed. So the thing I wanted to say though is like, it seems a lot of the time, especially nowadays, people think that there are ideas which are dangerous because if people hear them, they will be like mind whammied into believing them, and therefore we need to silence and suppress them. Yeah, and like I kind of have a problem with that because it feels like it treats humans as these very easily hackable, like we must protect people from this information, otherwise their brains will be taken over. And I just don't think brains are quite that hackable by humans.
Well, that's the whole thing with fake news, though. I'm really glad that they started cracking down on fake news because there are a lot of people who think that, oh, I saw it on the news means it's true.
Some people are, I think Eliezer put it in a nice way that like, the human brain is not unhackable. He put it more eloquently than that, but he was arguing with Neil deGrasse Tyson via Sam Harris on Sam Harris's podcast. Because he was like, well, Tyson says that if the AI in a box is acting up, he'll just shoot it with a shotgun.
Right.
And he's like, okay, yeah, sure, but you are not like immune from outside influence.
Yeah.
But he put it in a fun, rationalist Yudkowskian way.
I can totally see that, but like also when people start telling me, hey, how you shouldn't read Scott Alexander's posts because he will, trick you into being an evil right-wing person or something, I'm like, I think I can read things and form my own opinions.
Yeah, I've heard of the phenomena you're talking about in two different main guises. One of which is back in the New Atheist days, like so there was some argument like from the, I guess you call them like the moderate atheists, where it's like, well, yes, of course, you and we can survive without religion because we're sophisticated folk and we can accept reality as it is. But those poor masses out there, they can't handle it. And I find that like demeaning and childish, or treating people like children. Definitely, it's possible that someone's
if you think that's demeaning and treating people like children, you're gonna love when we talk about epistocracy later.
Looking forward to it. The other main context is what I've heard called the alt-right pipeline.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson on the Joe Rogan Experience, well, then YouTube will recommend another Joe Rogan Experience podcast to you, and because he's had
That's
right-leaning
also something we're going to talk about later, so maybe we should just move on to the main point of the show.
Very well. I'll just say that that's the other context that I've heard of this weird infantilization of people in, and that I don't approve of that. This is probably isn't advice anyone can really follow, but it's like, if you think you're gullible and vulnerable to dangerous ideas, make a safety bubble.
Yeah.
But like no one would acknowledge that about themselves, right? No one's going to say, you know what? I think I might be susceptible to the next bullshit thing someone tells me. I need to form a safety bubble.
It sounds like
I do the opposite, because I think brains are pretty hackable. I think if you hear something repeated, I think the best book I've read on this is Influence in Science and Practice by Robert Cialdini, which is a pretty old book.
Cialdini.
But it talks about a lot of ways that human brains can be hacked and how advertisers exploit these to make money, which is how you know they're true.
Yeah.
But so, I try to make I do the opposite of setting up an information bubble. I try to get information from a lot of different biased sources. So that, if you have people telling you conflicting things, then you're not just going to sleep on it and just believe everything you're told, because you can't.
I make it a point to every month, at least once or twice a month, watch the Conservative Twins, some video of theirs on YouTube, because they're, really charismatic and seem to be representing the people who are Trumpers, who think that Trump has a really good point and represents them. And I don't know, since that Scott Alexander post came out and the rationalists are officially now concerned about class, the technical terminology we should use is Trumpan proletariat. Absolutely, yeah.
Wait, what is that? Trumpan
proletariat?
Yeah.
Trumpan proletariat.
Yes.
Yeah. Lumpen proletariat with an L is a Marxist term for proletariat who aren't communists. So yeah.
Yeah, I try to listen to them once or twice a month, and every now and then I'm like, oh, these guys have good points. But then I'm like, oh my God, they just went off the crazy train. And I also try to watch at least one woke video a month, and that also always really irritates me. But it's good to keep the two things, in consideration.
Yeah, and I think that's important, not because they have necessarily have good perspectives or they're giving you information you wouldn't otherwise get. I think it's just important to hear opposing viewpoints so you remember that they exist.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then I think your brain will get hacked. I think if you only ever hear one perspective on something, you'll just kind of accept it as true.
Yeah, there's the whole thing about bubbles too, like your social bubble, where you just tend to end up with a bunch of people with the same political views, taste in movies, like clothing styles.
I do know there are some friends of mine, though, that if they saw like the Conservative Twins videos that I watch once or twice a month, they'd be like, dude.
If they knew you watched them,
yeah,
you'd be canceled.
I don't know if I would be canceled, but they're like, you're going to be pulled into the alt-right pipeline, dude. I'm worried about you. Like, this is brain contamination.
Yeah, it's like I see the virtue of not merely like reading a Reddit thread on like r/no stupid questions, like what's up with QAnon, but like actually getting like from people who actually believe it and who can articulate it in a not crazy way. Like you told me about these guys before. I haven't seen any of their stuff, but I mean, like if they seem to represent the non-crazy end of the spectrum. And so
at least one of them is on the crazy end. One of them is more.
But I mean,
got 1 foot on the other side of the line.
The fact that that at least they have a diverse set of opinions among the two of them, then, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, I guess because if you only ever read about this on your leftist bubbles, you're going to be like, oh, they're all obviously closet Nazis who hate minorities or whatever. And it's like, no, actually, a lot of them are like your friendly neighbors who will help you change a tire and.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so, like, that's the thing is, I know at least 2 or 3 Trump supporters, and they're perfectly nice people.
Yeah.
And so, like, and
how dare you say that?
I know, right? But like, if you only hear about stuff from your weird circle about how weird the enemy is, then like it pollutes everything.
Eneash, I think the people telling you that listening to that will contaminate your brain understand that staying in a filter bubble is going to make you believe everything you hear in that bubble, and they're trying to do that to you.
That's what they want.
Yeah.
They're upset that you're stepping out of the bubble because then it won't work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that does seem to be the case because I don't buy their bullshit now either. I'm like,
Yeah, right? It's exactly what they thought would happen.
yep.
my main source of right-leaning news is Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live is right leaning.
No, but,
Oh, okay.
but I'm joking because it makes fun of everybody.
Yeah,
It does make fun of the right more, but maybe it's me being biased. I feel like there's more to make fun of there. And
You might
so
also
The
be
joke
noted-
was extra meta because it wasn't funny, just like Saturday Night Live.
No.
most episodes of Saturday Night Live, I think when Tom Hanks was hosting one of the remote episodes, he was like, it's SNL. There's going to be a couple funny sketches, a few mad ones, and the rest will just be there. Like,
I actually have been really enjoying it recently.
I saw a really great, I guess it was sort of a skit where they had someone impersonating that crazy new right-wing lady senator.
oh yeah.
Yeah, and
Boebert?
it was, what's that?
Boebert.
Yes, and it was hilarious, and I loved it. And then afterwards, I felt really bad for loving it because basically it was someone dressing up like her and being, I'm a dumb idiot. Look at how stupid I am.
They
Is it
do-
okay to laugh at that?
But they do the same thing. Like I just watched because they didn't have a new one last night because they're lazy and they worked 5 whole weeks in a row and I guess they're tired. So we put
Bastards.
one from last year where John Mulaney was hosting, and it opens up with a bunch of it must have been during the presidential campaign. So it
Yeah,
would have been
because that's the one with the elderly man contest bit.
yeah.
Well, it was one of those, but it was at the opening cut was like Elizabeth Warren by Kate McKinnon. I think John Mulaney was doing Joe Biden. They had Pete Buttigieg and a couple of others, and then they had Larry David as Bernie Sanders, who does a perfect Bernie Sanders.
Mhm.
So I figured, like, as long as I'm making fun of everybody, I'm into it.
Yeah.
But the one that you're talking about was a Weekend Update,
Yes,
and
it was.
it had Cecily Strong playing What's Her Butt,
Okay.
and I thought it was hilarious.
I thought so too, but then I thought, like, how is
I hope you're
different?
taking notes because you got a link to all of these.
But like, how is this different from political blackface, where you dress yourself up like someone that you want to make fun of,
Because
and then
they-
act like an idiot?
Because they do it both ways. They also, on another Weekend Update in the last few months, they had 2 people on who were like, we need to start, the cancel culture is bad because it's not strong enough. We need to start canceling more people. Look, like this baby,
But that's just true.
this baby cried when it was delivered by a black doctor. We need to cancel this baby. So like,
That was a good bit.
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that they're pretty even-handed in what they make fun of. That's why I
Okay.
brought it up as an example. But
All right.
feel
Well,
like
if we
the
go
best-
any further without talking about libertarianism, David's going to explode.
I know I was
All
going to say,
right.
I feel like we spent the requisite 45 minutes on sequences and digressions. So the real purpose of this episode was last episode I had said that I basically I don't quite understand the steelman for libertarianism and or anarcho-capitalism, nor can I articulate the difference. And this is probably like now getting too broad, but my I pointed to the situation in Texas as it was 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Isn't this what you get when it's just businesses running shit without regulation?"
Because specifically, Texas left the U.S. power grid so they could avoid regulation, like having to winterize things, because they thought that was unnecessary and dumb. And then we had the Texas situation, and the question was like, is this not libertarianism? And why not? Or why is it actually good? Or whatever.
Yeah.
David, I hope we haven't stacked
No,
things against you too badly. And
Let the man talk. I
yeah,
wanna hear.
yeah.
So, do you want me to talk about Texas now, or should we wait until the part of the outline where it says we're supposed to talk about Texas?
I don't
Because
have an
I think
outline.
it would be better to wait to talk about Texas until like we go through the basic definitions and so on.
You know these Bayesian conspiracy types don't read outlines.
I forgot you did have an outline that I'll find really quick. So yeah, go ahead and take it in whatever order you wanted to, because you're our honored guests.
as long as you promise us this will lead to Texas.
Okay, so I think it's a good idea to start out with just a basic definition of libertarianism. And the definition I like is one that Reason Magazine uses a lot, so I feel like it's a pretty mainstream definition within libertarianism. It's a belief that it is desirable to limit the size, scope, and spending of government. And obviously this ranges from extremely moderate libertarians who think we should limit that a little to anarcho-capitalists who think we should limit it to 0. And unless you guys object, the definition of government that I'm working on is Max Weber's definition, which is a geographically limited monopoly on the legitimate use of force. So there's just one group in a certain geographical area that is allowed to shoot people, and other people won't complain too much. And that one organization is the government.
I think that definition is too narrow. And I also like a belief that it is desirable to limit the size, scope, and spending of government is like so innocuous a statement that it's impossible to challenge.
Well, isn't it also true of both the Democrats and the Republicans too? They just disagree on which parts to limit.
Right. Like, so if I were to say, if I said I disagreed with that statement that it's desirable to limit the size, scope, and spending of government, that like then you could just say, oh, so you think the government should have cameras in your bedroom watching you have sex because that's not limiting them at all.
Right.
Like, come on. So A, I think that's too weak a definition, and B, the description of the monopoly on violence, while I think that's part of government, I would say like the other part of governments might be like this entity organization that I send money to and they make roads and put out fires for me.
Well, what that definition says to me is that it's directional. It's saying, look at where we are. Do we need more government or less government?
Yeah, that's it. So like,
it's not coming from a vacuum. Then
so it's the definition isn't that you think there should be, if you're not a libertarian, then you think there should be no limits at all. It's that you think it should be limited relative to the current functions.
Okay. I can, then that caveat's part one enough sufficiently for me.
I again think that like the Republicans want to limit the size and scope of government in relation to certain businesses, whereas the Democrats want to limit it, for other businesses, and both of them have their own social issues where they want to limit or expand the government. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Isn't it usually the Democrats want to expand how much the government is involved in it, or like just add more regulation?
I think that's what you hear, but then you hear like, well, I mean, the Democrats aren't saying what you can do with your uterus if you're pregnant, right? Like the Republicans are like, oh yeah, we want to stay out of your small businesses, but we want all up in your uterus, right? So I think that they both, and I guess I'm not even comparing it to either branch, but if I compared it to government now, then I can at least say, okay, sure. If a libertarian says, look at government, and we'll figure out what that is here in a second. But then,
whatever that word means.
As a libertarian, I think that it's desirable to limit the size, scope, and spending of that. I can follow what you're saying there at the very least.
Yeah,
okay.
and I have to say there has been a political coalition between Republicans and libertarians, or rather between the Republican Party and libertarians for a couple of decades now. But that is something that a lot of libertarians don't like, including me. And it's also very historically contingent and fairly recent. So like Carter was an extremely libertarian president, but he was a Democrat. And then part of Reagan's strategy won over the libertarians, and then the Republicans were pretty much just coasting on libertarian sympathies since Reagan. And I do think Trump did a lot of good for the libertarians by getting the assholes out of the room. Again, this is something we'll talk about later, but that coalition is something I would very much look to see that breaking down fairly soon. So just a little advanced prediction there, but yeah, definitely both parties have some upsides from a libertarian perspective, and both parties have some downsides. And definitely since Trump, the Republicans have been diligently disavowing their upsides. So yeah, if you just think of it in terms of like libertarians can basically be rounded off to Republicans, then you're definitely going to make some easily avoidable mistakes.
Totally.
I've definitely heard some of my left-wing friends, really left, like characterize libertarians as conservatives who just want to be able to smoke weed.
Yeah.
That is, I hate that so much.
Yeah, I do too. I'm not friends with those people anymore.
Okay,
What
good.
about
Because of that.
So what about Stephen's proposition that governments are also the entity that we send money to have roads and firefighters?
So is the operator of a toll road a government?
No.
Is a private fire department a government?
No.
Okay.
I would say that in my, again, so what's awesome about this is that I'm coming from a position of basically zero knowledge. So
yeah. So like there are lots of entities to whom you give money in exchange for goods and services. The
Right.
difference between those entities and the government is those entities are voluntary, where the worst thing they can do to you if you don't send the money is they stop giving you the goods or services. The government, however, if you stop giving them money, will have men with guns show up at your house and say, hey, we noticed you stopped giving us money, please give us money. And if you refuse, they'll take you away and put you in a room.
Unless
Sure.
you're really rich.
And I mean, like that's the, I've heard it put that way before, and I think that I used to listen to a libertarian podcast like 10 or 12 years ago, and when he described it that way, and he went on to say, if you decide that you want to drive a little faster than the government says you can, then men with guns will come over and kidnap you and throw you in a room and lock the door. And it's like, okay, sure, if you characterize it that way, but like I think that the response to that might be something like, sure, but you're partaking in the society in which we've funded the roads you're driving on. If you're running a business, the roads that you ship your goods on, we've kept the water clean enough for you to drink. That unless you're ordering all your water in bottles and showering with that or something, right? Like or purifying your own water in some other way. Like I think that the argument is, look, we're giving you all this shit because you're part of the society and you're signed up to our electric grid, you're signed up to our water pipes. Pay your part, right? It's like a union.
Sure. So let me ask you this. Let's say you are walking down the street and I come up to you, put a gun to your head and say, hey, give me $20. And you give me $20. And then in return, I give you a half-eaten sandwich. Would you say that's a voluntary transaction? Or was that a transaction where I used force?
I would say it's not a voluntary transaction, but I'm already prepared to
But you
challenge
got
this
something for
analogy.
it. You got a sandwich.
Right, but I didn't ask for a sandwich.
And I didn't ask for a lot of things that the government does. Like, I didn't ask for a war in the Middle East. But
Okay.
I still have to pay money to fund the war in the Middle East because I haven't been given a choice there.
Right. I was already
that's what-
prepared to challenge this on weakness of analogy before I saw where you were going with it. But because I don't know, for me, it doesn't quite feel the same. So like if I came up to you and said,
Yeah,
give me
so
$20,
it doesn't quite feel the same because you've been mind whammied to normalize getting robbed every year so that you can fund a military to go off and bomb brown kids in Afghanistan.
It's possible that I've been mind whammied, and we'll see if I become unmind whammied or otherwise by the end of the episode. But like, I think the analogy falls apart because I'm not just getting a half-eaten sandwich. I'm also getting clean air, clean water. My neighbor isn't allowed to poison the ground near my house. I'm getting all sorts of protections and benefits in addition to this shitty sandwich.
Okay, so how much of the government's budget do you think goes to those things?
I don't know, and I don't know if that makes a strong case to my position.
If you don't want to be depressed, don't look
Okay,
at how much the government spends on wars versus like what was NASA, like the space program.
I think
yeah. So let me. I will go ahead and let you know the EPA has a very, very, very small budget relative to the Department of Defense. So with that in mind, if you could get exactly the same amount of clean air, clean water, not your neighbors not being able to poison stuff, etc., for like a fraction of the cost, and also the savings just means that the government bombs fewer brown kids, then do you consider that desirable?
How do I get that? Because I mean, obviously,
That's
desirable,
something we're going through in the Q&A.
right? So that's what I want to figure out is
Okay.
without some giant entity with a stick ready to smack my neighbor in the face for pouring.
Okay, so sorry. So real quick, do we agree on the definition of libertarianism? Because I have some more stuff I need to say before we get to whether or not libertarianism is desirable. Right now we need to agree on what libertarianism is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Libertarians
Okay.
want to reduce how big the government is compared to the current day.
Yep.
Okay. That sounds like a decent definition to me.
So the question isn't is libertarian desirable? It's how much libertarian is desirable. Because I think everyone could probably think of something they want the government to stop doing.
Right. I think there's also
that feels too much to me. Like I'm trying to win the argument by just defining libertarianism as that good thing that everyone wants.
Well, that's what I feel like you've done.
So if I had to like give a narrower definition that's less like that, it would be you want to limit the size, scope, and spending of government and in at least one area, and there are no areas where you would want to expand it. But that's getting a little bit too narrow so I would say that, but also you can like cut up the domain. So like you could say I'm a libertarian on social issues, but not really on economic ones or something like that.
Sure.
But
I can get behind that.
So are we cool on those definitions?
Cool enough to move forward for sure.
Okay, cool.
I mean, we can also just like do that thing where we, acknowledge that definitions are wuzzy and not necessarily valuable. If we start talking about something that isn't definition, look it up into the dictionary, libertarianism, I'm fine with that.
All right.
Like, what is the nice catchphrase? Definitions are like
the categories are made for man. Not man for the categories.
Exactly, right? So, I mean,
I don't want to get hung up on a no true libertarian is
right.
Yeah.
I don't want to get hung up on a no true Scotsman or hold on, let me look in the dictionary for that.
Yeah, I'm good to move forward.
Okay, cool. So before we move forward, there is something that happens a lot when people are discussing libertarianism. In fact, I would dare say it has already happened at least once in this conversation. And that is people will compare ideal governments to real life markets. And yes, obviously the real life markets do worse in that regard. Also, for the benefit of those left libertarians listening, we are talking about right libertarianism here. So if I equivocate between markets and libertarianism, then I was going to say I apologize, but I don't, because I don't respect you.
Wait, can you explain that distinction?
So basically, left libertarianism, as far as I understand it, which is not very well, is the idea that if we abolish governments and capitalism, then people will voluntarily organize themselves into ways that the particular left libertarian who's speaking currently finds desirable. And
that was my impression of what like libertarians are in general.
So that's true to an extent, but right libertarians have a much better theory about why it'll happen, especially because we're not so big on the abolish capitalism part.
Okay. Because I was going to say, abolish government and things will work out sounds a lot like old Marxism to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least
I mean, yes. A lot of left libertarianism is just like rehashing old-fashioned Marxism. So,
well, I mean, isn't that how anarcho libertarianism works too? Like, if we get rid of the government, people will just naturally form companies, and I think we've already proven that if we get rid of the government, people will just naturally form a different government.
That's not how I think about it. It's how some anarcho-capitalists think about it, but I think those anarcho-capitalists are dumb and bad. So,
I would like to hear why.
This is just at a meta level. This is why I like avoiding like neat little labels for things: libertarianism, anarcho-capitalists, Democrat, Republican, because then you've got all these associations and boxes you've got to check or don't check.
You need to define, like, you need to name things though, so you can talk about them.
Yeah,
I'd rather just say like, this is what I believe, right?
Okay.
Like, so
But it would take a long time.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
get what David believes.
yeah,
David is here to tell us why we should be libertarians, and I'm assuming he wants to be libertarians in the vein of him, so let's find out what his libertarianism is.
but don't get me wrong. Jace makes a good point that
I
having
do
short
believe that's
is
what
valuable
we've
for
just been
communication.
discussing.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, so that's something you shouldn't do. Don't compare ideal governments to real life markets. You should compare ideal government to ideal markets or real life government to real life markets. And I have requested you all obtain bonking sticks so that you can be bonked if you start doing that.
Didn't we have an excellent
But,
example when Stephen did
Yeah,
that?
we don't have video, so we're just going to work off the honor system for that. And yes, we did have an excellent example in chat, but I added it to the Q&A. So let's just move along so we can get to that part faster.
Very well.
Okay.
David in slavish devotion to outlines. He's like some kind of outline statist.
I know, right? Yeah, so basically there are two reasons I think libertarianism is desirable and why you should be libertarians if you're not. The first one is more pragmatic, which I realize for the consequentialists in our audience will be equivalent to morality, but I have separated them out just for the benefit of the non-consequentialists. So essentially, I think that the function of the law, and here I'm talking about the law as in like the thing that Wes messes with. So the function of the law should be essentially to maximize social efficiency, to make the pie, so to speak, as big as it can possibly be. And then if that society, which maximizes the size of the pie, has any really catastrophic outcomes, like people starving to death or dying of easily preventable disease, then those can be handled through redistribution. Personally, I believe if we get to that maximally efficient society, then there probably won't be many things like that, because even if some people are left with crumbs, the pie will be so big that the crumbs will be more than enough to give them an excellent standard of living.
Should the redistribution also be handled by the law? I'm not sure you clarified that.
No, so I consider the law to be distinct from redistribution. So laws would be things like regulation, minimum wages, emission standards, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then redistribution is just simply taking money from one person and giving it to someone else.
But
So-
that should not be handled by the laws and the government, or what?
Yeah,
So
who would do that?
that's why I was making the distinction I was earlier between with the law as the thing Wes messes with, because like technically from like a civics perspective, the way that you would enact that redistribution is Congress passes a thing that we call a law, which says take money from this group and give it to that group. But
I feel like
from
the
a law
bad
and
thing-
economics perspective, which is where I'm coming at this from, is like that is not quote unquote a law in the sense that it is something that law and economics is concerned about.
I feel like the bad thing you're referencing is what we tend to understand as regulation.
More or less, there are some things that I would consider law under this definition that aren't regulations, colloquially. But yeah, if you want to think about it as regulation versus redistribution, then that's probably good enough for this discussion. And I also want to say that we are far enough away from this maximally efficient legal code that I don't consider it worth quibbling over redistribution. So if we want to have a separate podcast about that at some point, I mean, we already kind of did with the UBI episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't I don't like fighting about whether or not we should have redistribution, because
Because your position is we should have it if we need it, but we probably won't need it.
Yeah, and we are far enough away from that position where we know whether or not we need it, that like it's not really something you can have a different anticipated a different anticipated experience about right now. So yeah, and also, you know, you sound like an asshole when you say we shouldn't have redistribution, and mostly I think that's because poor people are horribly screwed over by the government, and so they do actually need help that they wouldn't need if they weren't being so screwed over. But like I said, there's not really any difference in anticipated experience that we can have right now with the laws we do on that front.
All right, so we agree that redistribution, if it is necessary, is good, and that the government will do it, and we aren't talking about redistribution today.
Yeah.
Perfect. I have one last clarifying question.
Yes.
What is the pie in this the sales pitch?
The pie is all the stuff that society makes. So all of the goods and services which are produced by a society.
Okay.
And if you are skeptical that that any problems in this maximally efficient society can be addressed through redistribution, well, there's this thing called the second welfare theorem, which says that yes, they can be fixed through redistribution. And the second welfare theorem, as you know from the word theorem in the name, is a homework land thing, but it's actually one of the homework land things that applies pretty well to reality. But the detailed explanation would make really bad radio. So unless one of my co-hosts really wants to get the explanation, then we are probably best off just leaving it there.
There's enough to talk about that we can table some things.
I got a question about the pie.
Okay.
Sure.
You know, like, I don't think the government is just about the pie, because to take an example that we talked about on the Mind Killer a few weeks ago, when that cop ran over a kid at an intersection where a bunch of people were doing like donuts and drag racing and stuff.
Sure.
The major problem there was that there's a street intersection, and the people who live near that street intersection want peace and quiet at midnight so they can sleep or whatever. And a bunch of kids wanted to use that intersection for donuts and having fun and whatever. And they both, you know, want good things. One wants sleep, one wants fun. Those are both great. They can't both have them at the same time. And like, the government was there to decide who could actually use that street corner for their thing. And they were trying to enforce the sleep and quiet one. And then, you know, things got messy. But like, I don't think that has anything to do with making a pie bigger. It's just, how do we use this one street corner that we only have one?
Ooh, I know the answer. Is it Coase?
Yes, it is actually Coase. So essentially, we have a limited resource, a street corner. We only have one of them. The two uses we can put this to are peace and quiet, so people can sleep, and doing donuts. So we have one street corner that we can use to increase the size of the pie, because both donuts and peace and quiet are things that go into the size of the pie. And so the question is, who has more pie that they can make on the street corner? The kids or the people trying to sleep? And so the proper role for the government in that context is, or for a private agency, if we're talking about anarcho-capitalism, is to figure out who gets more pie by using the street corner the way they want it, and then to facilitate bargaining between the two parties so that whoever gets the most use out of it gets it, and if necessary, they may or may not have to compensate the other people who have to forego their preferred use. So like, in the particular example, an ideal government, or indeed a market with no transaction costs, would have the kids and the people trying to sleep all gather at the street corner and individually bid on how much they want to do donuts / have peace and quiet. and then whoever enters the highest bid gets their preferred use, and if the property rights are allocated to the loser of the auction, then the money that they bid goes to the original owner of the property rights. And this is the thing that Wes was talking about. It's the Coase theorem, which states that for a transaction which has externalities, which in this case means like you are doing something and
It affects other
you're
people.
using it will affect other people, then if property rights are clearly allocated and transaction costs are low, then the highest value activity will always be the one to take place, regardless of initial allocation of property rights. The only thing that initial allocation will change is the final distribution of resources.
But without someone to like enforce that, what did you call it? Like to mediate that discussion, and it's just people coming together and throwing money down. Like, wouldn't that just mean that if instead of it was a bunch of kids, it was Jeff Bezos who wanted to go into that street corner and shoot guns into the air to make noise, as much noise as possible, that he would just win de facto and fuck the poor people?
Well,
So in this context, him quote unquote fucking the poor people means paying the poor people lots and lots of money in order for them to grant him the right to shoot guns into the air, which doesn't seem like a terrible outcome to me.
All right, so hold on. I'm curious though. I guess I heard you say the theorem, but it's still not clear to me why he would have to pay lots and lots of money.
Yeah. So the
Like,
prevailing legal regime has means that you cannot shoot guns into the air whenever you want. And in an ideally Coasean framework, but with that same rule in place, the way that you get the right to shoot guns into the air is going around to everyone who has a property right to you not shooting guns in the air and paying them until they agree to let you shoot guns into the air.
I don't think this actually addresses the real concern, because the kids don't have the coordination or the money to rent out that street corner. Otherwise, they would have done it. And so instead, they're just going to go to a street corner where the property rights aren't being very well enforced until they find one where they can do donuts and the cops show up.
Yeah, and that's why I said that we're talking about an ideally Coasean society and blah, blah, blah. But like that was just for the purposes of demonstrating how both peace and quiet and doing donuts go into the size of the pie in the context of the ideal role for a government being to maximize the size of the pie, or rather for a law code, which doesn't necessarily have to come from a government.
Okay, I see. And in either system, either way, you're going to end up with a situation where the police got to show up due to realities on the ground.
Well, not
Probably.
necessarily. The old lady could come out of her house and start yelling at the kids, and the kids could say, hey, how about we toss you $50 and you look the other way?
I wish it worked that way.
You know, that kind of thing happens in real life all the time.
Jace just said he wishes it worked that way. Is Jace a libertarian?
No, I am, but also just the last two apartments I've lived in have, just yesterday, there was this dude who was working on his car, and he brought a concert-sized speaker and put it on his front porch, and then was just blasting bachata.
Oh my god.
And it was rattling the windows of my building, and I was just...
Isn't it nice to be able to call the cops and say they're violating the noise ordinance? Can you tell them to shut the fuck up?
No, because I don't do that.
Did you go offer him
that
money
is-
to stop?
Yeah. So that's one option. The other because the cop, so basically your social anxiety means you have foregone your property right to a quiet street corner because you're not willing to call the cops. And so that means that the guy blasting the music has the property right. And so what you need to do is go out and give him $100 to fuck off.
And then he takes it and he turns the volume up.
Exactly.
He wouldn't do that.
I mean, then you punch him.
I did actually we had these like lousy, shitty teenage neighbors, or maybe 20-somethings, fucking teens.
Youths.
That were just blasting music and screaming and doing shots all night long. And it was like 3 a.m. And I we tried to get like the building security to come do something about them, but they were like, oh, well, we can't unless there's like documented proof. So we're videotaping them.
You're like, sure, let me
It's
put this on speakerphone and you can hear it.
That was actually, I was on the phone and I was like, do you hear this? They were howling like wolves. Like the more I was like trying to like, I tried to talk to them too. I was like, open my window and I was like, hi, 2 people who live here that are trying to sleep currently. Could you please be a good citizen and stop howling like wolves?
Well,
and then
so the problem was your means of persuasion was asking if they can be good citizens instead of throwing $100 out the window.
Yeah, but do you really want to pay $100 every single night to get sleep?
Yeah. So then you need to actually enforce your property right to peace and quiet and get over your social anxiety.
Oh, I did.
So the question is not, does Jace really want to pay $100 every night to get sleep? It's, does he want to pay $100 every night to get sleep more than he wants to call the cops and enforce his property rights to get sleep?
So, in a lot of these cases, there's the whole thing of me being a white dude calling the cops on like poor Hispanic people, and I'm uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, well, I think this is actually a good Kosian bargaining situation. So, like, imagine there were no cops, and anyone was allowed; they were just allowed to make that noise. The idea would then be that, Jace, you go out and say, "Okay, well, I'll give you, $50 to be quiet tonight." Or you can even say, hey, I'll give you $300 to be quiet all month. Or you could go around to your neighbors and take up a collection and say, hey, I want to pay these guys to be quiet. What are you willing to pitch in?
I'm willing to do, I don't know, like what has actually worked is, for example, there was someone whose car alarm went off every night, and I fucking went around and I videotaped the car going off, and then I identified whose car it was, and I went to their door and showed them this video. It was like, hi, this wakes me up every night. This is your car, right? And then I said, like, I will help you disable this alarm.
With your cooperation or without it.
Huh?
With your cooperation or without your cooperation.
Well, there's escalating. I like to do the escalating level of threat where I got the Hispanic neighbors to be quieter by continually going up to their apartment, walking into the apartment and looking them in the eye. And like, you make people feel uncomfortable enough times, and then like they were usually willing to stop.
See, I don't have the cojones.
Yeah, so that's basically just Kosian bargaining.
Yeah.
Except instead of having a literal auction, you're just like using social pressure instead of money.
I think a much more long-term solution that people would fall back on is eventually forming communities where, to buy a property in the community, you first sign this document that says all of us will respect these quiet hours, and if you don't respect these quiet hours, we will hire a security service to come and force you to be quiet or something. And so you agree to that, and to me that looks a lot like a government.
Can I
that's a way of reallocating property rights so that you can lower the transaction costs, which is not something that enters into the basic Coase theorem, because that just assumes away the problem of property right allocation and transaction costs. But yeah, that is the sort of thing that empirical Coasians write about all the time.
I also think that it'll be a lot easier to understand libertarian arguments if you understand that even the most hardcore anarcho-capitalist recognizes that under the status quo, the government provides valuable services. It's just that they want those services provided by other entities than the government. So anarcho-capitalists and libertarians are still very in favor of having enforcement mechanisms for these kinds of things. They just tend to be private companies rather than governments.
Yes.
You had something, Chase?
Actually, I'll drop it. It was going back to the noise thing, but
okay.
I want to move along in this document here.
What do you say to people who yell Pinkertons at you whenever you mention security companies rather than government?
I pay them $50 to fuck off, because the First Amendment is that property rights are clearly allocated to them.
Yeah, I kind of, I guess, want to let you keep going just so we can move past the second bullet point in this doc. But
okay,
because I'm tempted to just keep bogging down in the weeds, but there'll be time for bogging shortly, I imagine. I'll see how long I
So-
can hold my tongue.
So, any other questions about social efficiency and whether or not it's desirable?
For the sake of moving the discussion along, no.
Okay, cool. So basically, if you accept that principle, then that means that the transactions which should be acceptable by default to you are any voluntary transactions between consenting individuals. Because if both parties consent to a transaction, that means they are both made better off by the transaction. And so while there are some cases where voluntary transactions can lower social welfare, for example, if there are externalities, like the parties that are keeping you up at night, they are voluntary between the person throwing the party and the people attending the party, but there are externalities, so they might reduce social welfare. But outside of a few narrow exceptions like that, if you agree that the best thing to do is maximize social efficiency, then you should allow all voluntary transactions between consenting individuals outside those constraints.
You managed to
and-
both make me praise you when you had said, of course, the caveat of externalities, and then you went on to say, barring those few narrow exceptions. So you had me at the first half. I'm like, oh, good, he's hitting the externality problem, and then you dismissed it as these narrow exceptions that are like not a problem.
Well, so the reason why I say those narrow exceptions is because even if you just accept that, and then you take a very, very, very broad reading of like what creates externalities, and other things like if there's market power or information asymmetries, then that's probably enough to make you a libertarian. Because things like smoking weed in your own home or paying a sex worker to have sex with you, unless you like think that there's some really important like moral fabric of society externality or something like that, then those don't really fall into the they don't really fall into any of those exceptions, but those are voluntary transactions that the government bans.
Sure.
So at least
but I've
with
got to counter.
respect to those, that is enough to make you a libertarian on the definition we're using.
Okay, well, like I'm thinking, like my HOA community. I don't think it's in our bylaws because it's in the government bylaws. But if we were just operating within the confines of like personal, what do we call them, property areas, whatever.
Mhm.
Like my HOA community decides, among other things, when you change the oil in your car, you can just dump it in the gutter because it flows down the street to the next neighborhood, and we don't care about them. And it's expensive to dispose of properly, so fuck them. Like it's our rules that we were okay with dumping our oil and name everything else that shitty that comes out of your house. We're okay with dumping it because it goes down the street. Like that's an
Okay.
externality, and dismissing that sounds like it sounds like pretending that wouldn't happen. Like that's not a problem.
Yeah, so I'm not dismissing it, but that's also a pretty easy externality to handle. Because remember, externalities get internalized if property rights are clearly allocated and transaction costs are low. And in the case of that particular example, the transaction costs are pretty low. Like you just follow the gutter until you find the place that the oil seems to be coming from, and then bang on the door of whoever's house is next to the gutter at that point. Obviously,
Right, but our community is let's say it's gated with 40-foot high walls, and we've got guards. I guess and this is where I tried to not get bogged down. And if this is going to bog us down, just say we'll get to that later. But I'm just curious, like how this doesn't just totally fuck people without power. I know the idea is that if you imagine the perfect spherical economist in a vacuum, everyone has power.
sure.
And the community can get, me and my poor cohorts can get together and go bang on these walls, but they can safely ignore us.
Yeah,
if it's going to get us too far afield, that's fine. But
Inyash Jace, I need you to bonk Steven because he just did the bonkable offense. So yes, it's true that under some set of circumstances, you can conceive of a society where rich people or otherwise powerful people can fuck over poor people. But for libertarianism to be desirable, it doesn't need to outperform every single possible scenario. It just needs to outperform the government. And if you're positing a group of people who are so powerful, whether it be through wealth or political connections or whatever, that they can just like dump oil wherever they want and get away with it, then you're probably going to have a problem with that group of people no matter how you organize society.
I think the counter example to Stephen's point would be like, we have an American government and we also have how they have historically treated the American Indians, which is very much how you're describing how the gated community treats their neighbors, where they have all the power, so the neighbors, or the American Indians in this case, get shat on and wiped out or whatever. Because
exactly.
Okay, so I will receive my bonk, and I will say out loud, you're right. I was comparing an idealized version of this. I wasn't, rather than just does better than what we have. Okay, that I appreciate you pointing that out.
You're welcome.
For things to bonk Steven with, because we didn't have a bonking stick, and I was just like, "There's a bottle."
I told you to get a bonking stick.
He has been metaphysically bonked. That's the best kind of bonk.
And I appreciated this kind of bonk because it came without a bonk. So all right.
I was also like, when I saw on pain of bonking, I was like, it's okay. That probably doesn't mean what I'm reading it as. No,
that's boinking.
Like yeah, boinking. Yeah, it looks like boinking if the font is small. All right. No, that's great. I appreciate you pointing that out. We should have put it on a whiteboard and stuck it to the wall that says, "This just has to do better than now. This doesn't have to be perfect." Okay. All right.
So how about second welfare theorem?
No, that's the one that takes an hour, right?
Yeah, it's not that it takes super long. It's just easier to explain if you draw a graph. If you're really curious, you can Google Edgeworth box, EDGEWORTA space BOX. And that's like a graphical representation of the second welfare theorem. It's also something that a buddy of mine did his dissertation on. So if you really want to do a deep dive into the second welfare theorem, we can have John on. Yeah.
So what about
whatever
whatever else you were going to talk about next?
Yeah. So that's basically the pragmatic case. Just if you buy that you're maximizing social welfare, then you should at least allow all voluntary transaction, or you should allow all voluntary transactions unless you have some reason not to, and that's sufficient to make someone a libertarian with the system we currently have. So there's also some other moral arguments that aren't consequentialist. And
Wait.
Yep.
Let's step back a second.
Okay.
I know a lot of people who would say, yes, I basically agree that we should allow all voluntary exchanges, except for some very small minority that we might have to object for some reason. And yet those people do not consider themselves libertarians. Why not?
Probably because libertarians have chronically bad PR. I would consider them a libertarian, though.
Really?
Or they might object on moral grounds.
That's all it takes. Just that most voluntary transactions should not be interfered with.
I mean, I could think of...
I think people saying that have not thought out the implications of that statement.
Yeah.
Almost all transactions are interfered with in some way in our society.
Yes.
Can you...
So I could elaborate on that, but it's much better if you just go to the Crime a Day Twitter and just scroll on that page or on that feed until you're convinced.
Well, I'm interested in like what Wes thinks are the every single transaction is interfered with in some way stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
for one,
so
most
go
of them
to-
are taxed.
Yeah. Also,
I
go
totally agree
to
with
the
Mr.
Crime a Day Twitter. Go to the Crime a Day Twitter and
Right.
scroll on that until you're convinced that there's a law about just about everything.
Yeah. Okay. I think I see what you're saying.
So there's a bunch of numbers and symbols, something 50 CFR, something ... Make it a federal crime to hunt striped skunk in the Big Stone National Wildlife Refuge anytime other than 1/2 hour before legal sunrise until legal sunset from September 1st through the last day of February.
Yes.
Okay. But I
Make it a crime to sell bunk beds without a permanent label stating the name and address of the bunk bed maker.
oof,
Yeah.
damn.
You can name literally any noun, and I will do a search on this feed, and there will be some stupid law about it.
Okay.
Or any noun that describes like a real life thing and not something fictional or otherwise complete nonsense.
I guess one of the things that annoys us right now is that we cannot get stem cells injected into us in the U.S. if we want to pay someone to do that.
Yes.
We were just talking about that.
Yes, we were.
Oh, you got they were
That's
on
why
the
I
air
brought
too,
it
though.
up.
I'm not sure if.
I don't think we were recording at the time.
Yeah.
All right, so I think the moral position is, I think I'm already sold on this. I was sold on it when I read John Stuart Mill's On Liberty.
That's a good place to start.
I think so. I think it might have coined libertarianism, but the sentence, the moral framework, is
not
essentially
quite, but yeah, he was definitely very, very early on there.
right on. Yeah, I mean the framework is essentially my freedom to swing my fist ends where your face begins.
Yes,
That
ends at
means,
the
like-
tip of your nose.
Right. I can do whatever I want as long as I'm not impacting somebody else. And now, what does it mean to impact somebody? I think that's where people get fuzzy in the head. But to me, it's like, okay, am I impacting my neighbor by, like you said, hiring a sex worker to consensually have sex with me? I'm only impacting them insofar as they have some objection to me doing whatever I want with my free time. Or am I impacting my society by taking LSD at home? Right? No.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, like I said, you'd need to have like some sort of basic sanity check on how you're defining externalities. Because like you could say that like me selling you my watch could hurt someone because at some point someone might ask me the time. And if I sell you my watch, then I won't be able to tell them. And so do you need to compensate that person as well for the like 2 cents that it takes them, that they're costed by not knowing the time until they find someone else who does have a watch? No. And like, obviously not. And so that really just gets down to the difference between, homework land and real life. Like you're allowed to have some element of common sense here. And if there are any like genuinely hard problems to that effect where it's not obvious that some person is just being silly, in the hypothetical, I have yet to encounter it. And if there is a genuinely hard case like that, then just have a bidding war, because that's literally what bidding wars are for figuring out who values something more than someone else.
Could I, for the sake of the conversation, even though I think I could imagine already the answer to this, but how does libertarianism take into account, people making irrational decisions with regard to, like, I don't know, without regulation, you'll end up with lots of people, making shit products that aren't safe and driving their shit cars around that'll be exploding. And if I care about safety, then what am I supposed to do?
So you did not quite make a comparison there, so I won't require a bonk. But the way that I address that concern is by asking, when is someone more likely to make an irrational decision? When they are making a decision about how they want to spend their money for goods and services that they will consume directly, or when they are making a decision about whom to vote for, which may or may not have an impact on how their state's electors vote, which may or may not have an impact on who actually ends up in office, which may or may not have an impact on whether whatever laws we want passed actually get passed.
People make shit decisions with, or the whole thing about like people buying snake oil, I guess, which again is the reason that I kind of already addressed it in my head, because there's even that, like, I think Eliezer wrote the whole thing about the
Banned item shop
story, yeah, which is sort of, you just have to accept the externalities because the benefits outweigh the.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to is
so,
people allowed to make bad decisions.
Yeah, and like it's not just that people are allowed to make bad decisions, it's that people are more likely to make bad decisions in the voting booth than they are in the marketplace. So trying to ban bad decisions by government fiat has the problem of we need to have a way to decide who gets to decide what's a bad decision and ban it. And the current system we have for doing that is elections, and that got Donald Trump elected. And so if you grant the government a general power to ban bad decisions, then whenever someone like Trump gets elected, which empirically happens around once every 200 years or so, then you end up with things like masks getting banned during a pandemic.
Well, I agree with you. I think that's a losing case to make to the general populace. People are going to see, their little old grandma killed by a snake oil guy who doesn't give a fuck, and they're going to want to make a law against that. And no amount of saying people are allowed to make bad decisions because they should be the ones who get to decide if the decision is good or bad is going to stop someone for voting for that law.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I have
I
to go in a couple of minutes.
Oh shit.
Stuff you want to say then?
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to break in here because Eneash, I think you just brought up my biggest objection to this idea of a government-free society, which is, and you mentioned homeowners associations earlier, which are part of this, which is that I think if you don't have a government, people will just make a government. People really like preventing other people from doing things.
They love it.
They are addicted to it. They can't stop doing it. And I just feel like in any system where there isn't a government, people will just create one voluntarily and everyone will sign on to it. And you see this with homeowners associations, that there's this area that's unregulated. And what do people do? They get together, form an association, and immediately take away people's choices about whether to join it or not. So I feel like that's sort of what I would expect in any kind of society that didn't have some kind of enforcement mechanism against governments.
Yeah,
I could picture this on a small scale where, it's me and a dozen people on an island, and together, or at least most of us, decide that, hey, look, the fresh water is coming from this stream on the top. Anyone caught taking a shit in it gets beaten up, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's government small scale. And like, even if someone wants to make an irrational decision there and shit in the good water, like the government of the other 11 of us will have something to say about that.
I think that's what
Right. I don't think you're going to go pay him not to shit in the water. I think you're just going to go point a gun at him and say, "Don't shit in the water."
Right. I'm gonna pay him with by not hitting him in the face.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say is that when you do get to talking about anarcho-capitalism, I had real trouble understanding what the concept was for a while, and the way I was able to conceptualize it is that it's not really an absence of government; it's a series of subscription governments that are all operating in the same area, and that you can choose which one you want to subscribe to.
Yeah, so that is why I brought up the Max Planck definition of government, because anarcho-capitalism, as I conceive of it, and as Wes understands it as well, is anarchic in the Planck sense that there isn't a geographically localized monopoly, but a lot of the things that governments currently do would end up happening under anarcho-capitalism.
Yeah, and if you want to see a really cool creative take on this, I recommend "Too Like the Lightning" by Ada Palmer.
Oh, so good.
Quite.
Yeah. All right, so I got to run, guys.
All right.
Wes,
but,
I'm so sorry that I gave you the wrong time.
No,
and
it's
we need to
fine.
hear three more.
It's fine. You guys, I feel like 5 was too many for this anyway.
I kind of agree.
I think 5 in a room where we could see who wanted to talk next would have worked, but
Yeah, maybe. All right,
next time
but I'm sure the rest of this will be awesome.
Perfect.
All right, see you guys later.
thanks.
Okay,
Bye.
bye. Yeah, so also homeowners associations are governments. They're just governments where immigration is very, very cheap and easy. So they are like the least objectionable form of government. And if we ended up with a society with governments where the right of exit was as cheap and easy as it is with most homeowners associations, I'd be pretty okay with that as a compromise. And then before that, we were talking about something else, and I can't remember what.
Well, I think we've basically laid down that libertarianism is the foundation was that if you accept that voluntary transactions should, except for extreme outliers, always be acceptable, and that's libertarianism. That brings us to, didn't that turn Texas into a meat locker?
Not quite, because I also have some moral arguments that are some non-pragmatic moral arguments that I want to go over real quick. And these ones are important because the fonder someone is of these arguments, the worse a libertarian they tend to be. Not in the sense of being less dedicated to the principles of limiting the size, scope, and spending of government, but just they tend to be shittier human beings. So I do think it's important to talk about these and why they are bad and the extent to which they can be redeemed. How?
Take it away.
Okay, so the first one is everyone's favorite terrible argument for libertarianism, the non-aggression principle. Yay!
Nah.
So the non-aggression principle is the principle that initiating force against another person is always and everywhere a bad thing to do. This is a bad argument because it is trivially easy to come up with cases where the consequences of rigorously following the non-aggression principle are very, very bad. So easy, in fact, that I'm pretty sure you guys could think of one without stopping to think about it very long. And indeed, so easy that sometimes these events actually happen in real life.
Like I generated one with a hypothetical a minute ago about the dozen people on an island.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
The person who's sitting in our clean water hasn't committed violence against us first. They've just poisoned our drinking water.
Yes. My favorite is that there's a meteor headed towards Earth, and it will wipe out all of humanity. And Mortimer Snodgrass has a space laser that we can use to destroy the meteor or deflect it. But Mortimer Snodgrass is a crotchety old misanthropic man who doesn't care about other people and won't live very long himself anyway, so he refuses to let us use his space laser, and the morally correct thing to do is obviously to punch Mortimer in the mouth and use the space laser anyway. And then if you're like super dedicated, then you can maybe throw him $50 afterwards to compensate for the space laser ammunition.
There's a great moment like that actually on Santa Clarita Diet. She wants into the basement of this building, and she's like, hold on, let me go to the ATM first, because the guard won't let her in. And he's like, what is this, a bribe? And she's like, no, it's for your nose. And then she hits him in the face and throws $300 at him.
Nice. So this is a very bad argument if you take it as a deontological principle. But I do think that the non-aggression presumption, which is that you should presume against aggression, except in cases where it's obviously catastrophically bad consequences, is a much better alternative. So I am a virtuist, so I am allowed to think about both high-level principles and immediate consequences. So I generally like a cost-to-benefit ratio of around 2 to 3 to justify aggression. But if you are a strict consequentialist, then you can just use it as a tiebreaker. Or if you are a less consequentialist virtuist than I am, then you can ask for a higher cost-benefit ratio. That just comes down to personal moral preferences.
Okay.
And by virtuous, do you mean virtue ethics?
Yes. And by virtue ethics, I mean there are several factors that contribute to moral decision-making, which is intermediate between like the super hardcore consequentialist or Kantian. There is only one thing that you should consider, versus the like biblical deontology of like there are these 1,000 and some rules that you need to follow in all situations.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
personally, I like the classical 7 of faith, hope, love, courage, prudence, temperance, and justice. But,
But those are things we can
I'm-
get into on our virtuous
Oh, Wes
ethics
left.
podcast.
You and Wes could argue about hedonism if you haven't done that already. Mind killers or whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't want to argue with Wes about moral philosophy because his moral philosophy is super half-baked. And now that he's gone, I can say that without getting any pushback. Eat my ass,
He's a
Wes.
lawyer, so he can find good ways to justify it, even if they aren't actual good arguments.
Yep.
He's really hard to debate with. It's fun.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Next time we'll debate with Wes on something.
I'm not saying he's wrong, but I'm saying he has an unfair advantage even when he is wrong.
I think the virtue ethicist has an easy answer. Enjoy a bit of hedonism. Not so much that it ruins your life, but not so little that it ruins your life.
Exactly.
All right. So
Sounds like consequentialism to me, but
So-
okay.
it's personal consequence. Yeah. All right. So bad argument 2, we've got ethical egoism.
Yeah, so this is basically just the fuck you got mine argument that I think Steven has been worried about this whole time. And it is a bad argument because it's really, really bad PR, and there's no other reasons why it's a bad argument at all.
That sounds like bad PR just admitting it.
wait, can you explain that?
Yeah, no, that's a joke.
Oh, okay.
It's an obviously bad argument for a lot of reasons. And it's so obviously bad that I can goof on it being bad by saying the only reason it's bad is because it'll upset people when it's actually bad for a lot of obvious reasons.
I mean, the fact that a lot of people don't realize that makes it not quite as obvious as you're saying, in my opinion.
Okay, well, sorry. It was a joke. Get off my ass.
Okay. Your joke sins are forgiven.
Okay.
Okay, I'll get all the way off that.
Yeah, so the better alternative to the don't tread on me argument is the don't tread on anyone argument. So politicians basically want two things. They want money and they want votes. And in America, the middle class is the biggest class and the upper class is predictably the richest class. So when governments are making decisions, they tend to favor the preferences of the middle and upper class. And so poor people get screwed. And this is why you get things like corporate welfare and much less of things like actual welfare for actual poor people. And there's also just like the basic logic of special interest politics, where essentially it's easier to get a law passed getting you a special handout than it is to repeal a whole bunch of laws, no one of which causes you a lot of problems, but all of which together cause you a lot of problems. And I actually listened to a really interesting podcast episode recently about this. So if you want to do a quick digression on that, then we can.
I mean, we're pushing 2 hours as it is, so... I think
Yeah, and we're not even halfway through the
Okay.
outline. But what do you say?
We could make it two-parter if you feel like coming back for the second half.
I would love to come back for the second half.
Yeah, I mean, we got to keep. We're not wrapping up right yet.
No.
Good. Yeah. Then let's keep rolling. We'll figure out where to press pause.
Also, like, I literally have nothing to do for another 4 hours or so. So if you guys just want to, like, make a super long episode, I'm okay with that.
I don't think I could handle that. Plus, I do got to go out and do some chores.
Okay. All right. Then do you want to cut it after or before we get to the Q&A?
No, the whole point of this was to find out why Texas isn't libertarianism land.
Well,
Yeah,
we
we-
need to
Press pause.
yeah, well, we need to keep the audience engagement. We need to get them to come back for part 2.
This is what happens
That
when
could
you
be the
stick to
cliffhanger.
outlines, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Okay.
move past the moral arguments then. For
Okay.
now,
Well, so real quick, because this is the Bayesian conspiracy, and we never say no to a good whatchamacallit, tangent. And this is actually a really cool story. So in case you didn't notice, alcohol sales laws in America are really fucked up, and they tend to be fucked up at the state level. So there's a lot of fuckery instead of just like one big pile of fuckery. And I mean, yes, everyone can. So like in my home state of South Carolina, liquor stores need to have a big red dot on the frontage. Why? I don't know, because someone said so. But yeah, so
Letter.
yeah, so the one of the weird things about our system is we have a 3-tiered system where the producers, wholesalers, and retailers of alcohol cannot be the same legal entity.
Huh.
And so this has led to a lot of rent seeking getting built up, where things like the reason you couldn't get a to-go cocktail before the pandemic was because whenever someone tried, then the liquor stores would panic and get a law passed banning it. And just in general, they've like been trying to eat each other's lunches, which normally that would be prevented by vertical integration, where one company owns the entire supply chain.
Can we talk about breweries in New Jersey?
Yeah, once we finish this story. So normally you would just vertically integrate, and that would deal with this infighting issue. But because of this federally mandated 3-tiered system, that doesn't happen with liquor. But then the pandemic rolled around, and that provided a Schelling point for all of these various lobbying groups for alcohol companies to all coordinate and get rid of a whole bunch of these regulations all at once. And pretty much everyone involved is much happier now than they were before the pandemic, because they have gotten rid of a bunch of these bullshit laws. But before, they each found it in their individual interest to just try to get regulations favoring them passed, rather than trying to get rid of a bunch of them all at once. And so anyway, all that is to say that the government hurts everyone, and it hurts some people less than others, but probably you are getting hurt by the government quite badly in ways you don't even entirely realize. And so the better alternative to the don't tread on me argument is don't tread on anyone, because everyone is getting trod on, including breweries in New Jersey. Jace?
Nice. There's this thing in New Jersey and possibly other places where breweries are, I don't know, I don't know if it's to do with they don't want them competing with bars, or bars don't want them competing with them, or what the hell, but you can only have a brewery if it's categorized and markets itself as like a educational experience, where you have a mandatory tour of the brewery that you have to take the tour, and then you can have a tasting afterwards. But the breweries that I went into, I don't know, someone described it and they're like, oh yeah, I did a brewery tour, you got to see the stills and stuff, and I like built it up in my head as, oh cool, like I wonder if you like go in there and you can make your own beer, and you can like pick out which hops you want, and they tell you about the history of no, they're like, I went in and they're like, hey guys, come this way, sign this waiver, here's our stills over here, here's the other stills, here's the shit that we put in the stills, okay, go drink. Sign this other waiver first.
Nice.
I was just like, oh man, I wanted the tour. Can libertarianism solve this for me?
Yes, it can, because if you get rid of that stupid law that requires the tour, then you can actually distinguish between the breweries that actually do give you an educational experience and the ones that just have to say they do to get Uncle Sam off their backs.
Yeah.
Also, the don't tread on anyone. Have you seen the ridiculous redraws of the don't tread on me flag?
Yes.
Please tread on me, Daddy.
The no step on snack ones.
Yeah.
I like that one, but I like the please tread on me, Daddy ones too.
I like the most minimal one where it was a squiggly line and the word don't.
So, I mean,
Should make you merch for that if people haven't made a flag, like just lots of snakes. Don't tread on any of us.
my own real
conventionally, conventionally, don't tread on anyone comes on a yellow background beneath a hedgehog, which is the animal of the Libertarian Party, and also just a generally good symbolic representation for a lot of reasons.
And a good animal.
Yeah.
My one sentence example of government being annoying with business regulation like that is car dealerships, at least in Colorado, aren't open on Sundays because of the law.
Yep.
And I thought that was insane because unless you wanted to skip work, it means that you have to do all your car shopping on Saturday. I've bought a car since 2013. I don't even think that was the case in 2013, but I was in school and I guess my schedule was more flexible. But when I was buying a car last year, it was annoying. So I guess the don't tread on, there's so many things I feel like we need to hit. Like, don't tread on anyone is a great motto to live by, but as soon as it becomes very profitable to tread on one group of people might be inclined to do it, right? You used the example of the American Indians earlier. Like, when it became very profitable and easy to say, hey, get out of here, or we're going to kill you, or we'll kill enough of you to scare the rest of you out of here. People just did it.
So people just did it. People just did it, but they didn't do it because it was profitable. Like, it took a long freaking time before America's having colonized the Western United States actually turned a profit in any accounting sense. They did it because of manifest destiny and because Theodore Roosevelt thought that it would make his pee-pee feel good. And so, he was right. And it wasn't just Roosevelt. It was also like Taft and some other people.
There were a lot of people involved.
Does the don't tread on anyone kind of motto require like that all libertarians be basically like rational altruists?
No, because treading on other people is very rarely profitable. This is not something that was in the Q&A, but it should have been. Just generally, if people will spend more resources to defend things that are theirs than they will to take things from others, and this is true for both both rational strategic reasons and irrational emotional reasons. And so that means that stealing from other people is almost never profitable. If you just have like arbitrary amounts of money that you're willing to throw at stealing from someone, then sure, it'll cause problems eventually. But that's another one of those circumstances where, like, if you have people that are that powerful and that determined to screw over other people, then it's going to cause you problems no matter how you organize society.
I think the prevalence of people stealing from other people kind of disproves the stealing is almost never profitable thing. Like, this is a thing that happens a lot.
Especially if you subscribe to the taxation is theft idea.
So it happens because there are economies of scale with respect to stealing, at least certainly with governmental stealing, because like the government already has a big military lying around, so they might as well use it for something. And taking stuff from other people seems like a fine use of that military. But if you don't have a military lying around, then you need to get a military together before you take stuff, and that's the expensive part.
And if you don't have one lying around, then your neighbor who does might just take your stuff.
That is the admittedly hard problem.
At least we can flag it as a hard problem.
Yes. So national defense is one of the big things that anarcho-capitalists don't really have a good response to, and I admit that it is a hard problem.
All right, I got two questions that are probably related before we dive into the Texas thing, and maybe that's what we have. So, like, we've got the standard allegory parable of the fisherman at the pond, right, or at the lake, where there's 100 fishermen or fish you know the story. The fish factory, there's 100 of them around it. They're all polluting the water like crazy to get as many fish as they can. They all agree to buy a $300 filter that costs $300 a month to maintain, and they're all doing great. The water stays clean. Jeff, the dick holdout decides, you know what, I'm not going to waste the $300, and they're making $999 a month, and everyone else is basically doing the exact same, except they're all paying for the filter, and then not paying for the filter catches on because they're all saving money, and then they're all worse off because the fish are all dying. So like, there's that plus like the holdout problem. You know, like if those teenagers wanted to go around and pay the neighbors to make noise on that intersection, like all it takes is one person saying "fuck you," I don't care what you're offering me.
Another Mortimer Snodgrass.
Right. But like all it takes is one person to say, you know what, I don't want to do this. Scott Alexander uses the example of someone farming wasps in their backyard, right? Like if I live in an HOA, we can say no wasp farms allowed. But if I
farm wasps,
because you're an asshole, right? But so like,
I mean, famously, there was an old lady in a libertarian town that loved bears, and so she fed bears on her property, and it was a huge problem for the rest of the community.
It sounds like a problem. So like, it just, I guess, how does so then again, we can say, all right, we'll pay you all $100 a month to not raise wasps, or we can all agree, 100% of us, to not do it, and then we'll sign a piece of paper saying that we won't do it, otherwise we owe you $100. But like, getting unanimous votes for everything down to the level of wasps sounds like impossible.
So I guess that is getting deep into the weeds. And if you want to take a 4-hour tangent for me to talk about mechanism design and pre-commitment, I am super down for that. But it sounds like I have more endurance on that front than you guys do.
I was sort of hoping we get to that general topic, but
okay.
I mean, there has to be there has to be a not 4-hour version of defend. You don't have to defend it perfectly, but there has to be a not 4-hour version. Otherwise, I'm going to accuse you of Jordan Peterson.
Okay. So the short version is there are so like the way I would do it if I was like designing a mechanism for that is I would have everyone buy into a basically social insurance pool where if say the filters cost $300 but not having them will get you $400 in profit, have everyone put $200 into the pool, and then at the end of whatever period, the pool pays out evenly amongst all people who had filters. And then if there are holdouts, then that gets back into the complicated area. But basically, there are ways around the problem, and they tend to not be simple. But if you do want to read the work of the woman who literally wrote the book on this, it is what Stone Cold Badass and first woman economics Nobel Prize winner Eleanor Ostrom did her prize-winning work on. It is well worth the read.
Okay, that sounds fun. Yeah, because I'm just thinking like then we'll just push past it. But I'm thinking you got to pay somebody to inspect the filters. So like they're going to get less than the 100% return unless the person's being paid by somebody else. You got to pay the accountant who's keeping track of all this shit. Like these people are going to lose money somewhere, or it's coming from somewhere else. But all right, let's touch on Texas because I'm curious. Like, so this was in my naivete. I was thinking, all right, well look, they said regulation sucks, and they went without it, and they all got fucked, right? Or at least many of them, plenty of them did, right? The rich ones or the assholes got to fly out to Cancun, but the rest of them who didn't have plane tickets ready to go to Cancun, they got fucked, right?
Yes.
So this seems like a great argument in favor of regulation, saying, look, I don't care what you guys want to do. We're gonna put in some minimum enforcements on what you're allowed to do as part of our society. That includes like the kind of shit you're allowed to burn to power your vehicles. That includes the amount of like minimum effort you have to put into building your critical infrastructure, etc.
Yeah. So the big case against blaming Texas's power failure on libertarianism is that their grid wasn't libertarian. It wasn't like it was a regulated cooperative with a whole bunch of stakeholders, of whom consumers were only a small share. So in an ideal libertarian society, then you would just have a whole bunch of power companies competing, and one could be like super duper robust, and their customers would pay a lot for that, but they would almost never fail. And then you would have more lackluster or more lackadaisical companies. And if their customers wanted to save money and deal with occasional brownouts and blackouts, then that's a choice they could make. Obviously, with cases like power, where you actually need to run physical power lines to every single house, it is more complicated than that. And that is something I specifically want to address at length in the Q&A. But suffice it to say that Texas does not quite live up to the libertarian ideal, but to some extent that is a it's kind of no true Scotsmaning. So the other thing I'll say is, if you do pass that sort of regulation, that every single especially if you pass it at the federal level, then you would need everywhere to be able to deal with hurricanes as well as Louisiana does, and heat as well as Texas does, and cold as well as Alaska does, and so on.
Well,
and it's better to just have to make those decisions as locally as possible, so that each individual customer, or not individual customers because of the fixed cost problems, but where as few numbers of customers as you can get away with are making decisions for themselves about what risks they want to take in exchange for higher energy bills. And if you mandate Texas needs to have its grid hardened against these once-in-a-decade snowstorms, then that will lead to higher energy prices. And you are making a decision for the people who are paying those prices that they should be paying those prices, when they might rather use that money to buy food or put gas in their cars or do other things that they would prefer to paying higher energy prices. And so it's really easy to point at a specific bad thing that happened and then hit the do something button. But you need to remember that those sorts of things come with costs, and someone needs to pay those costs. And the best way for evaluating those sorts of cost benefit calculations is just by allowing the people who are affected to make the decisions. And so that's why you would want those decisions made by actual Texans.
Okay, yeah, I follow. I think I follow everything you're saying. I think that, whether or not the average person that you ask would agree to this or not, they would, I think, probably understand that they'd rather pay another $60 a year in energy bills than have a 20% chance of paying $16,000 a week to warm their house, right? Sure. Over any given decade. Like, I sort of just assume that's the case, and this gets me to, I think, my solution with Texas that I gleaned from this conversation is that these people probably weren't given a choice because there weren't competing markets. And so what happened in Texas wasn't a libertarian failure. This was just bad design, bad organization.
Well, seeing that there couldn't be competing markets.
So you
could if you said this is like a thing that locally Texans should decide on. If 51% of Texans decide, you know what, we do want to winterize and we're willing to bear the costs, and they pass a regulation that says all the power has to be winterized, is that acceptable in a libertarian version, since it was local decision and the majority decided to go with it?
That is certainly more acceptable than the federal government saying all power grids need to be winterized. So the other big objection I have to blaming Texas on libertarianism is that the reason why Texas could only experiment with different ways of providing power if it was an isolated energy island was because of federal regulations that they didn't want to follow. And those regulations weren't like simple common sense stuff. Texas was doing those anyway. It was like very specific things where Texas thought that they could do them better and cheaper. And in a lot of cases, they were right. But the federal government arbitrarily decided if you want to experiment with that specific thing, then you can't be plugged into our power grid. And so, like, the really simple marginal libertarian solution is just let people experiment with different ways of providing power without being completely cut off from all other grids in the country.
Well, if those other grids feel that that experimentation will put them at risk, don't they have the right to disassociate from Texas if they want to?
They do, but I'm pretty sure that no one was making that case. Like the generally power is generated locally, and the only reason you have a national grid is so that the entire thing doesn't blow up in the case of these local emergencies. If anyone has made the case that connecting Texas's grid with the rest of the country would present a serious environmental or safety risk to the rest of the country, I have not heard it.
I think that, yeah.
Although, if I have in fact just not heard it, and that is true, then of course that's a decision that the rest of the country is free to make.
I think that's why, and this will be, future conversation fodder. But I guess at the end of the day, there's a reason this is a gigantic field of study that you can't sum up in 2 hours because,
yes,
there's a zillion nuances. I mean, if 85% of my neighbors in Texas were like, no, fuck the, paying an extra $11 a year for safer electricity, I want to spend that on whatever you said, food and gas, but I'm assuming more stupid things because it's $11. I'm making numbers up, but should I just be fucked because all my neighbors are idiots? No, obviously I can just move out of Texas. Just get in your car and drive 2,000 miles. But that's not that's not a real solution, right?
You could probably also buy an emergency generator.
Yeah, I suppose if I had the, but even that, I imagine that you can't run that inside, so it has to be outside, and then I've got to have that.
No, you can run an emergency generator inside.
Really?
I have done this.
It depends on some of the details, but yeah.
I suppose, yeah, if it vented outside, or if it ran on gas, then, or if it ran on electricity and you had one of those Tesla power banks,
Oh, okay. I was about to say it's counterproductive if it runs on electricity.
Yeah, you just plug it into the wall and charge it. Then you power your house with it.
Yeah, they do have electricity-powered electricity generators that are called extension cords.
But I can put the Texas thing aside because this was not a good libertarian example, and I knew it wasn't made the
and real quick, I do want to say it isn't necessarily the case that lack of competition means it's not libertarian, because you can have natural monopolies where you don't have competition, even in an ideally libertarian society. So that wasn't. It's not that if there's a monopoly, then it's not libertarianism. That would be left libertarianism or just blatant no true Scotsmanning. It's more that the particular monopoly we're talking about here definitely has some government muckery in addition to just general monopoly problems.
I disagree that we can just set Texas aside, because anybody who wants to score a point against libertarianism is going to point at Texas and say, see, look, this happened because they didn't have regulations requiring winterization. This is a big libertarianism fail. And just saying, well, yeah, that's what the people of Texas chose it's not a counter argument. People are going to still walk away from that saying, yeah, okay, I won. That's a point against libertarianism. We shouldn't have it.
Yeah, so if someone stubbornly ignores that some policies have costs and that it's often very easy to just pay attention to the benefits of the policy and ignore the cost, then that person's just an idiot, and I don't care whether or not they think they scored points.
Well, okay, you can say that, but in my experience, that is the majority of people. That's even where I was 10, 15 years ago when I argued with my libertarian friends back then. I was like, yeah, sure, there's costs to some of these things, but it's worth it to have the regulation and save lives. And maybe now I think more nuanced. But
so if they have actually done their homework and shown that done a cost benefit calculation, then we can have a discussion. But usually they just say, "Oh no, it's worth the cost," and they just leave that as a baseless assertion.
Yeah,
and
but
I don't care about refuting every single baseless assertion. There's too many idiots out there making baseless assertions for me to go around rebutting every single one of them.
Well, that's the problem, because every single one of these people does have a vote, and so
and that's why we need an epistocracy to disenfranchise them.
Oh my God! So libertarian leads directly to not everyone should have the right to vote, which is going to be a huge problem in the U.S.
My brand of libertarianism does, yes, because my brand of libertarianism is very unpopular, despite being very good for pretty much everyone.
That's not very good, though. To be very good, you have to deal with the realities on the ground, including everybody wants a vote.
Yeah, regardless of how good it is, you still have to be able to sell it. But that was the joke I was about to make, which is like, David, how do we use libertarianism to stop people from making stupid arguments against libertarianism? You don't understand libertarianism.
Well,
well, PR is not my department.
Yep. The answer is we hire a really good PR person.
That's
maybe,
hard.
or several. But
so I also want to talk real quick about the follow-up from Inyash.
Yes.
About people receiving massive electric bills, because this is also a very good point, and this is something where libertarians can actually have some more traction without needing to completely overhaul the way the entire country does power generation.
Okay, so the way I understand this is that people could get lower rates if they went with a variable rate contract that said, you're charged more or less depending on what the power demand is. And for the most part, they save money all the time in the aggregate. But then this happened, and some people got bills for tens of thousands of dollars, or at least over $10,000. And technically, that's on the up and up. The demand went really high. The supply went really low. Everything checked out. But that seems really wrong to most people, that you can just get hit with this bill for...
Well, especially when you didn't enter into a contract, again, other than deciding you're going to get in your car and drive 2,000 miles, you didn't get a choice.
No, there were other options.
Yeah,
they could have extended the contract too.
Yeah, so this is something that a lot of people object to, and I just straight up do not understand it. Basically, what we have here is a decision between a constant cost or basically playing double or nothing. And these people lost, and for some reason, people are focusing on the fact that they lost a bunch of money playing this game rather than the fact that they chose to play the game. So and if you choose to take a variable rate contract and once a decade there are these big snowstorms and demand goes up way, way high and supply goes down way, way low, then that's something you should have priced into your decision. And if you fail to do that and you end up saddled with a really big electric bill, my heart goes out to people who genuinely cannot pay these bills. But after a certain point, you just need to say that people have to live with the consequences of their decisions. And I don't get why that's such a hard concept to wrap your head around. Another instance of the same argument I've had was I had a friend arguing that CD Projekt Red should pay the guy who wrote the Witcher books a lot of money because the Witcher games were a way bigger success than he anticipated when he originally sold the rights to it. but like CDPR offered him a percentage contract. He declined it in exchange for a fixed rate contract, and he ended up losing that bet. And like, I don't see any way to make the case that he should be indemnified for having made this bet and lost that doesn't end in a massive clusterfuck where everyone will always make those big bets because they know that they'll be subsidized if they lose. And like, that's like exactly the mode of thinking that led to the 2008 financial crash. So
Yes,
clearly this is a bad thing to generalize, and there's no reason why you should embrace it in this specific case without generalizing it. So don't embrace it.
I think you are pivoting to a much easier to defend argument, so I want to bring it back to the power one.
Yeah, so I'm pivoting to a different case of the same thing happening.
Yes, I
And
understand.
it's a case where I think a lot of people's intuitions will be primed differently.
And I agree, but
I
I think that there is a distinct and important difference in the fact that people's intuitions are primed differently. They think that having the ability to generate heat in a deadly snowstorm is a basic necessity of living, which it probably is, and that it is immoral to charge someone that much amount of money. And I agree with you on all the points that you made, except for the fact that a lot of people believe that the government should prevent people from being able to make immoral contracts. Like, the government does not allow you to take out a hit on someone else. The government does not allow you to sell yourself into slavery. And there are people who would say the government should not allow you to sign a variable rate contract that has no limits and no exceptions for things like this happening. And therefore, the contract and the bill should be thrown out on grounds of being unconscionable.
This actually ties into bonus
I
minimum wage, but we'll have to just table that.
Yeah.
so I actually do think that I do think you should be allowed to sell yourself into slavery, and the reason why it's acceptable to ban assassination contracts is because they have large negative externalities. I would love to see someone trying to internalize that particular externality. But yeah, assassination contracts do fall into the exceptions we've talked about, to where voluntary transactions are maybe not social utility maximizing.
You had a thing, Chase?
Yeah, if we're not going to the QA, could you talk about the sort of issue with perfect information? That's sort of my one hesitance about some of this, like, scam artists could flourish.
And I think to expand on that exact thing, or maybe this is an example, tell me if I'm right or wrong, Jace, like, I don't know if the average person is equipped to understand the risk involved over the next 20 years of signing a variable rate or fixed rate contract for electricity, right? So, like, that person either might not have information due to lobbying or lack of internet freedom or something, or they might just not be good at numbers.
I also think this system actually incentivize scam artistry.
Right.
Okay, so let's say that when you're choosing a variable rate versus a fixed rate, there was text in 14-point bold red print saying, "Warning, over the past 10 years, prices have gone as high as such and such during these circumstances, and are likely, and by meteorological estimates, this is however many percent likely to happen again in the next 10 years. And people chose the variable rate anyway, then would you still think that they should pay the variable rate?
I think that's my easier question than Jace's, but just a quick answer would be like, if that was presented on the front page and they had said, look, your odds of having to pay $48,000 a month for electricity are approximately 1 in 500. Do you still want to sign? Then I'd be okay with it. If it's hidden in obscure legalese on page 468, then I disagree with it.
What's making the company that's producing these have to put that label?
I don't think
in the particular case of Texas, it's people in the Texas Energy Cooperative or whatever it's called voting to require it.
Okay, I like that. What are you going to say, Niash?
I think a lot of this the real sticking point comes down to what is government allowed to stop people from doing for their own good. Like that is what the variable rate contract question is. That is like, do people have to get vaccines before they can get on a plane kind of thing? It's what is the level where the government says you have to do this thing for your own good, even if you don't want to?
So vaccines are
variable rate is one of those things.
Yeah, so vaccines are an interesting and timely example because you don't actually need a government to enforce vaccines. You can just have the airline companies enforce vaccines, and the schools and the stores and so on. Like that is something that I think a libertarian society would actually address very, very well. For the same reason that even though I live in the deep South and like probably 70% of the people I see walking around are unmasked, every single business has a sign in the window saying, please put on a mask before you enter this establishment.
I heard that.
So if the businesses actually were able to enforce their property rights in a meaningful way to having their customer base actually use protective equipment, then that would be like a lot
better.
That would be much better than just having a government where there's a 50% chance that it's run by someone good and a 50% chance that it's run by Trump.
I heard that Texas, shortly
yeah,
after
I know the odds aren't 50-50, but that was just for illustrative purposes.
The movie's good.
I heard that Texas, after the mask lifting passed, that like Target, for example, said you still have to wear masks to come to Target.
Yeah,
that's a good example. And then the idea of a vaccine-free schools and airlines. I'm just picturing like someone deciding to send their kid to the Jenny McCarthy, elementary school, where like 1 in 10 kid dies of preventable illness, or like someone else deciding, I'm going to fly on the vaccine-free airline. I guess then again, it's probably cheaper to fly on the vaccine-free airline, and if you're vaccinated, you're safe to fly there. So, not 100%, but you're safer.
Yeah.
Assuming they didn't also ban masks and make you lick each other's faces, then you're probably in decent shape.
It works as long as you assume people make rational choices, but that's my other issue.
Yeah.
I think I'm with Jace. I want protection. This is my
So again, people are more likely to make rational choices about what they're buying for themselves with their own money than they are when they're voting. And so, like, it is completely true that people are often irrational, but they're more rational in the marketplace than they are in the voting booth. So the government cannot be a solution to irrationality.
I mean, the government. You're right, because I'm looking at an ideal government, not the one we have, and yet I think
dodge.
We're getting. I dodged that bonk. I think we're getting a little far afield, but I do. We'll put a pin in this for next time. I share Jace's concern massively for like, how do we protect people who don't have either perfect information or the ability to move to a place with a better HOA?
Yeah, so I do want to talk about perfect information real quick because it is just like another chance for me to goosh about some basic price theory. So the information problem is essentially so suppose you are a car dealer who knows whether your cars are peaches or lemons, and I'm trying to buy a car from you. I don't know whether they're peaches or lemons. So because I don't know whether they're peaches or lemons, the only I won't be, and say your lot is split 50-50 between them. And I won't go into specific numbers because that doesn't make very good radio. But if that's the case, then I'm only willing to pay half the price I'd be willing to pay for a peach. Or rather, half the price I'd be willing to pay for a peach plus half the price I'd be willing to pay for a lemon, which is the expected value of a random car. If you know that I'm not going to do better than that halfway between price, then you're going to take all of the peaches off the lot because you're getting underpaid for all of them. And so you'll only have lemons I will only be willing to pay the lemon price once you take the peaches off the lot. And we end up with a market where you only sell lemons and you don't get paid very much for it. So this is a case not just of imperfect information, but of asymmetric information. And in asymmetric information markets, then voluntary exchange isn't guaranteed to create the social optimum outcome. It's very important that it is asymmetric information markets, because imperfect information markets, where the imperfection is symmetrical, do actually produce an efficient outcome. Because if you don't know whether any given car is a lemon or a peach, then you'll be willing to accept the halfway between price, because there's a 50% chance that you get overpaid and a 50% chance that you get underpaid. Asymmetric information is a case where voluntary exchange can end with bad outcomes. But there are more ways than people think for imperfect information problems or asymmetric information problems to be resolved. Some of my favorites are hostage capital, which is just one of my favorite concepts in economics. You were saying something, Jace?
I don't these solutions though largely require coordination efforts.
No,
it's
they
not
don't. And
Really?
And hostage capital is a coordination-less way to solve asymmetric information problems. So
Okay.
I will talk about it now.
Yes. Tell me about that.
Well, okay.
Or
I got to be ramping this up sometime
Okay.
soon.
All right.
I got to stuff.
Okay, then this can be the last thing we talk about in this episode, and we can do a part 2 at some point.
How long will this take?
It will take like 5-10 minutes, but it'll take longer if you keep asking questions.
We'll do some pre-reading before the next episode and read about hostage capitalism, because that sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
And we'll save it for next time. How's that sound?
Okay, fine.
I know we're leaving you hanging, but you said leave you more. Now you're wanting.
You gave me hostage capital blue balls. Thank you.
You're incentivized to come back and give us the next version.
I don't need an incentive.
So before we wrap this up, since this was supposed to be addressing the Texas thing, are there anything else that any of us want to say about the whole Texas thing?
I have one last factual question that should have a yes or no. You said that the fixed rate was an option.
Mm-hmm.
So if I am either I chose the variable rate, you, my neighbor, chose the fixed rate.
Right.
Did your electricity work with the same reliability as mine, and you got to pay your usual rate?
Yes, because you can't shut off electricity just to an individual house. It's to regions. Which is why when they kept electricity going to the hospitals, they basically had the entire region around the hospital got electricity, and those were generally the nicer parts of town, from what I heard.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm happy to hear that.
Okay.
That if you did opt into the fixed rate contract, that you weren't individually penalized during the black and brownouts.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was my last clarifying question there.
No way.
All right.
Anything from Jace?
nah, let's wrap it up.
All right.
Wait. Anything from David about the whole Texas thing?
Yeah, if a place has a government, then generally you want to bet against anything that happens in that place being an argument against libertarianism.
Deal. I really
not always, but generally.
Sure. No, I really appreciate this whole conversation. I thought that it was a lot of fun. I mean, the downside is there's just too many rabbit holes. This is the kind of conversation you need to have.
I admit, when you pitched this group episode to me, my initial thought was, "You think we can do that in one episode?"
We could have.
Glad to see I'm right.
I don't know. It was
also,
a good time.
Inyash, if you are hosting this podcast in particular and you're betting against a bunch of tangents, then you are a fool.
Well, yeah, okay. But I don't know. The one thing I would say about Texas is that it seems to me a lot of the problems that people have against libertarian is what Wes said. People like to prevent people from doing things. And one of those things is not having insurance, not having regulations, and you're going to run into a problem whenever you have a large group of people trying to have a sort of libertarian government that doesn't do that, because people just seem to think it's really important.
It's a social punishment thing, right?
Yeah. They have to force people to not make dumb decisions. And I have issues with that, because a lot of decisions that the government in the past has said are dumb are things that I want to choose to do, like, have gay sex or take drugs or whatever it is. But on the other hand, there's also a strong, overwhelming social pressure to not allow people to get those kinds of bills or to not have certain types of insurance. And that's another hard problem that I think is difficult to solve. I don't think defense one is the only one.
It's giving me a lot to chew on anyway.
Okay, good.
No, this was awesome. And this was awesome largely in part today due to Dmitry Parisky. I'm sorry, Dmitry, I can't read good. Dmitry Parisky. I'm going to go with that pronunciation.
Your public education system at work, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, try this public education system.
What? I went to the same public education system as you.
Yeah, so can you?
It's definitely Dmitry.
May I try?
All right, Dmitry Parisky. I think it wasn't so much that I couldn't read it; it's that I can't talk. So anyway, it was a little column A, a little column B. Anyway, thank you, Dmitry. You rock, and we really appreciate everything you do for us. Let us know if we can do anything for you. That goes for everybody, including you, David. Thanks for coming on. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun. Even if most of this was just chasing each other's tails and trying to touch 100 things in an hour, I had a great time with it. So
yeah,
it was good. Let's continue it sometime.
Yeah, thank you, David, for coming on. Thank you, Dmitry, for being our patron and producing this episode for everyone to listen to. Hopefully, they all appreciate it as well. And
thank you to Wes for being here for an hour. Sorry we had scheduling kerfuffles.
Yeah. Oh, and everybody, if you want to hear more of news, politics, and in particular, David pushing his libertarian agenda on everybody, listen to The Mind Killer. It is our sister podcast. It also has on it.
I only push my libertarian agenda at people who voluntarily agree.
By listening to the podcast. That's true. And Wes always pushes his, I don't know exactly
statist agenda.
It's not fully statist, though. It's sort of
weird. Very statist.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not that statist.
He also likes, what the hell is it? Wireheading and hedonism. And he gets some wacky ideas that are fun.
And I will just push my general, everything I'm correct on agenda. So, yeah.
I'm an ordained minister of the Church of the Dude, so that's basically my agenda.
Yeah, so you abide.
Yeah, I abide. So, yeah, I also, just as long as we're plugging Mind Killers, maybe I'm biased because I'm on this side of the microphone for this podcast, but I laugh a lot more listening to the Mind Killers than I do recording this, I think.
Okay.
David, especially, I find your brand of humor, exactly point on. There was one, I think this prompted me to bring it up in the chat, months ago. Wes had dropped some one word of legalese, and you're like, "Hey, for those of us who aren't lawyers and or pretentious, can you define that?" And I still chuckle about that to this day.
Oh, thanks.
For people like our podcast, because we're not with each other, and then the opposite. I like both flavors.
Yeah, it's different flavors for sure.
Yeah. So Google the Mind Killer podcast, or just come to our site. We will have a link to it as well. And we'll see you all in 2 weeks, I guess.
Cool beans.
All right,
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, bud.
Bye.